Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to Utility Sports. Today, we are starting to cover day 3 of NFL free agency. Right now, it is just me, myself, and I on here for Utility Sports. But let's get this live stream started. Welcome, everybody, to the stream that is in here now. We had some people waiting for us to start here. Mr. Jaden Hopkins, thank you for jumping into the stream right away. Really appreciate you guys all being in here waiting for Utility Sports. Burger Does Sports says Deshaun to the Broncos will happen after Watson gets cleared from the accusation. If it is false, we did just put a video out on the channel before the live stream here covering Deshaun Watson, possible landing spots for him here in free agency. As some of these transactions transpire, kind of opens up the door for some places, also shuts the door for a few others, especially when we look at the cap numbers for some teams. The Chicago Bears going after Andy Dalton, for example, does kind of close them out of them in free agency. Kyron says Andy Dalton to the Bears made me laugh. Yeah, me too. That is a big time nothing move for Chicago. I did not like that. I don't think he's much of an upgrade over Nick Foles even, and they paid him a little bit more than I think he's worth. I don't think he is a starting level quarterback in the NFL. Welcome everybody to the stream. We really love having you guys in here. You have been killing it lately for us here. The support you guys have shown has meant so much. We can't do this without you guys. You guys mean so much to us here at Utility Sports. Welcome to the stream. Nugget Master, welcome to the stream as well. He said, looks like the Bears will be third in the North for their division. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm leaning as well. The Lions for sure sticking in the cellar there in the NFC North. The Vikings, much improved. They're getting Michael Pierce back, who was an opt-out this past year. They're also going to get a healthy Danielle Hunter back more than likely. And they added Dalvin Tomlinson, that defensive line getting a total facelift, and they needed it badly. Cornerback situation, still a concern for me. But I think the Vikings could be a team in that new 17-game schedule that could go 11-6 or possibly 10-7. They're going to be pretty dangerous. Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook, a pretty good combination on offense as well. And then the Packers have the NFC North locked up already. They are going to win that division. Kyron says Alex Smith to the Broncos would be a good move. Smith rarely throws interceptions and could help block with that. Do you see Alex Smith there as a mentor for the Denver Broncos? Because I think that would be an interesting move, especially if they do lose out on Deshaun Watson. But I think that'll probably be a little bit later on in free agency. I don't think they're going to rush into a deal with Alex Smith. Brandon Kesey says, what's going on? He's been here 3 straight days. Welcome back to the stream, Brandon. Love having you in here. Go Jaguars. Let's see what they get done today as well. I like Labs and Bagel says, hello, welcome to the stream. First time I've seen you comment in here. Glad to have you. Steven Johnson says, what's up? Glad on having you in here. The Dern here asking about the Detroit Lions moves. Let's take a look at what the Detroit Lions have done specifically at this point. Going to the NFC North. What have they done specifically? Well, they brought in Jared Goff. Obviously, that's kind of the starting point here. The biggest part about bringing in Jared Goff is not only did they get a young quarterback who maybe they could look at as being part of their future plans, but they got 2 first-round picks in the future. Those are going to be key elements to a rebuild for the Detroit Lions. I really love that move for them. The Jamal Williams signing last night, this 2-year, $7.5 million. I think he's a solid running back option, but again, him being there in Detroit, that's kind of a nothing move for me and how it affects the NFL. Tyrell Williams, I really like Tyrell Williams. I think it has a little bit of an overpay with what his max value could be at over $6 million, but his base is only 4.7. I actually wanted the New York Jets to go after him. I thought he could have been a good replacement to a guy like Robbie Anderson, someone who can stretch the field a little bit from that outside wide receiver position. I really like what he brings. Josh Hill, not necessarily in love with that, but that's going to happen. Dan Campbell bringing in a guy he had worked with the New Orleans Saints. That tends to be what happens. Love that you guys were able to keep Romeo Okwara. He is the bright spot there for you guys on that defensive line. It is very good that he was able to stay there in Detroit. And then also bring in Michael Brockers last night. Now, it's a little awkward that he had tweeted a thing about Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford, with Stafford being an upgrade, because now he's back in the same locker room as Jared Goff yet again. But talent-wise, he is for sure an improvement along that defensive line. Him and Romeo Okwara are going to be very strong as an edge D-tackle pairing moving forward. We already have a donation. Aaron B., thank you for the $5. He says, glad you guys are back. Keeping up the good work. Thoughts on the A.J. Green signing? If we re-sign Patrick Peterson, do we still target a cornerback in the draft, that being the Arizona Cardinals? Yes, Aaron B. I think you do still target a cornerback, even if Pat Pete does stay in Arizona. Pat Pete probably comes back on a short-term deal. And for the Cardinals, you have to be looking at long-term options. A guy like J.C. Horn out of South Carolina, would really love him. Eric Stokes, he's going to be a guy who's flying up boards. A little bit lazy footwork, in my opinion, at that cornerback position, but he's got a good upper half when it comes to coverage. He's got good hands, good eyes, can read quarterbacks, and he's got blazing speed. I mean, he ran a 4.25 40 at that cornerback position. That is rare. We usually don't see that type of athleticism from cornerbacks. I think Eric Stokes could be a guy we see fly, but I also really love what J.C. Horn presents there at that position. Mega here, staying on the topic of cornerback, talking about William Jackson III, saying he was a great signing for the Washington football team. I completely agree. He was the best cornerback still on the board after Shaquille Griffin got picked up yesterday by the Jacksonville Jaguars. I love that addition for Washington. I think that they are a lot better today than they were yesterday for sure. I think he's an improvement over Ronald Darby as well, who they had lost in free agency. And Aaron, I didn't mean to skip over your AJ Green portion of that. My thoughts on AJ Green, I think it's a good low-risk move for the Arizona Cardinals. Now, I don't think he'll ever return to being a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. I think that's just past where we're at with his career. He's going to be 33 years old before he plays his next NFL game. Had 2 back-to-back down years, but I do think that there is still some upside, especially when he's going to be looked at as not the number 1 guy, not the number 2 guy, but a complement piece to both Christian Kirk and DeAndre Hopkins there in Arizona. I think that that is a solid move. Beavis, welcome to the stream. He says, any news on my Tampa Bay Buccaneers? So far, not yet. They've been a little quiet the recent day and a half. There was a rumor about them and James White, but nothing has gotten done there on that front. Also, watch for them to be looking to find a way to keep Antonio Brown around. Remember, Tom Brady has his guys. He's going to want to keep his guys around. But Tampa Bay, they have to be looked at as one of the winners in free agency at this point. They were able to keep all of their guys almost, including Rob Gronkowski, who they got a deal done with yesterday. They were able to keep Shaq Barrett on day 1 of free agency. Those were 2 of the big names that they got a deal done with. Levante David. Tom Brady did a lot for that franchise, taking a little bit of a pay cut yet again, something he's done multiple times throughout his career. And for Tampa Bay, this is a dream scenario. You get to run it back essentially with the team that just won the Super Bowl. Nugget Master saying, so any news for day 3 on the free agency front? Yeah, it's been kind of a busy day. There is Raiders. They signed John Brown. They also brought back one of their own at the D tackle position. 49ers made splashes this morning, signing not 1, but 2 offensive linemen. They kept Trent Williams there on a massive 6-year, $138 million deal. And I mean, that is a massive, massive payday, $23 million a year for a 32-year-old left tackle. But don't get me wrong, he is well worth every single penny of that. He is a great run blocker, a phenomenal pass blocker. He was the best player available in free agency, in my opinion, and they were able to keep him. Also, they brought in Alex Mack, who I think is an underrated signing. He's going to go a long way in helping protect Jimmy Garoppolo or whoever's throwing the football, and also really is a great fit in that Kyle Shanahan run. Remember, he had worked with Alex Mack there in Atlanta before going to San Francisco. That is a very good signing, in my opinion. Steven Johnson hopes the Cowboys get Patrick Peterson. I think that he would be a pretty good grab. He's going to be a guy who gets a little bit more valuable the further out we go in free agency. As some of these other top younger cornerbacks go off the board, expect his market to heat up. I think the Jets will be interested, the Raiders for sure, and the Cowboys are the 3 lead teams, in my opinion, at this point. Today has been a quiet day for free agency, says Luza. Yeah, I understand that. That's kind of how it goes. But one key thing to talk about here, Patriots play second-round tender on cornerback J.C. Jackson. For what that means for you guys, for those of you who don't understand necessarily what a second-round tender is, at this point, he becomes a restricted free agent where if another team signs him, say the New York Jets or any other team looking for a cornerback, they give up their second-round pick in exchange for signing the player J.C. Jackson. The Patriots would get that asset, and in turn, the team that signs J.C. Jackson gets to have J.C. Jackson. Now, why is this important? Is there going to be teams that are going to line up to give J.C. Jackson not only a huge payday, but give up their second-round pick to do so? I actually believe the answer to that is yes. J.C. Jackson, one of the better young cornerbacks in the NFL, has been an absolute beast for Bill Belichick and that New England Patriots defense the last 2-3 years. And I think that a lot of teams are going to be lining up to have negotiations with J.C. Jackson, is it possible he returns to New England? Yes, but at this point, they've already made a move with Jalen Mills. Possibly this is why maybe they felt like J.C. Jackson was not interested in coming back to New England. That will be the key situation to monitor today, as well as the wide receivers still on the board. Kenny Golladay being a big one there. There are quite a few good free agents still left on the board at this point. Kenny Golladay, Juju Smith-Schuster, Will Fuller, Curtis Samuel headline the wide receiver position. We've also got playmaker at the safety position, Anthony Harris, edge Hassan Reddick, who had a pretty good year for the Cardinals, linebacker Jayon Brown, very good in pass coverage, and also the safety cornerback combo Desmond King, and other former Tennessee Titan Adoree Jackson, who was a surprise release just yesterday. Expect those guys to have pretty solid markets as well in free agency as we go about it. Edgar V here asking about any news on Sherman. Not yet. Sherman, his market, like Patrick Peterson, is going to heat up a little bit as we move forward. KX asked, thoughts that Ertz could go to the Bills? I would actually love that fit. I think he would be a phenomenal compliment to Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs being someone who can stretch the field, great after the catch. Zach Ertz, a little bit more of a blanket tight end, someone who's a little bit reliable, can really function within that 10-yard radius of the line of scrimmage. I think that's really where he could fit well, is Buffalo, giving Josh Allen a little bit more of a reliable target underneath. That's kind of what Cole Beasley does for them, but Ertz could also be a good piece moving forward. Everyday Sports Mania says, thoughts on Deshaun adding Patriots to his preferred destination list? I haven't seen that the Patriots were on his preferred destination list. The latest I saw was that it was the Denver Broncos and San Francisco 49ers. But remember, some of these lists are just leaks from reporters. Those aren't necessarily 100% fact either. So it's very possible that I could have missed something, but it's also very possible that that is not real news. Deshaun Watson himself isn't tweeting these things out. You have to remember that these are coming through leaks, through sources that maybe aren't necessarily fully in the know, but it is definitely worth monitoring. Flashy YT, thoughts on David Andrews leaving? Yeah, it's a tough loss for New England, but at the same point, you just did bring Ted Karras back in. You had lost him to Miami previously. He comes back now to the New England Patriots. I think he'll be quality starting center for you guys, especially once he kind of gets that cohesion back with that new offensive line that they've put together there. He'll play next to Shaq Mason on that offensive line. I think Trent Brown was a great reacquisition for New England. They're looking very good along that offensive line. Still one of the top 3 offensive lines, in my opinion. Jackson Goldsmith says, Golladay signing today. Where do you think he goes? I can't say for sure he does sign today. I thought he would have yesterday by now. But at this point, he has been being a little patient. What I'm hearing is actually that some GM's executives view him as not a true number 1 wide receiver. That's kind of where I myself find him. As kind of a guy who's a little bit of a 1B or 2A type option, where he's really good, but he's not necessarily the guy you want to line up and pay $14, $15, $16 million to. That's what I've been saying now for pretty much the whole duration of the season while we were still in the season. At this point, I think Galladay's market's a little bit drier than he wants it to be, but expect the Giants to maybe open the gates for him. I know they signed John Ross, but that wouldn't prevent a Kenny Golladay signing. Another team to watch would be the Washington football team. I think those are the 2 lead dogs at this point. Las Vegas is a good fit, but I don't know financially if they can afford to do that with their other needs on defense and the offensive line right now. Kyler Crawford says, how do you feel about the John Brown signing? I actually do like the John Brown signing quite a bit. Like I was saying about the Raiders, they have to kind of pinch money in some areas, wide receiver being one of them. I think John Brown's a solid low-end receiver that you can bring in on a pretty cheap deal. Obviously, it wasn't working out there in Buffalo with what his next contract was going to be, kind of injured this past season. But when he's healthy, he's a burner. He's a guy who gives you some ability to stretch the field, and I think that's going to be really valuable for Las Vegas. Let's see here. Keox asks, is Desmond King in free agency? Yes, he is right now in free agency. The Tennessee Titans released him a little bit earlier on in the offseason. That is a big-time player still out there. He's a young player, 26 years old, and he could be really impactful in a variety of secondaries. The Raiders would be a good fit for him. Also wouldn't be surprised if Washington, I know they already addressed cornerback and William Jackson, would come out, maybe think Desmond King can be their starting free safety long-term. That would be interesting. I also think Washington could be in the running for Anthony Harris, one of the top free agent safeties available. Ali A. Click says, where is Keanu Neal going? At this point, I think Keanu Neal is probably going to end up either being a Dallas Cowboy or a Minnesota Viking. and I have a slight preference towards the Minnesota Vikings as a landing spot for him. I think he would be a great complement safety to Harrison Smith, someone who is kind of a do-it-all safety, can play in the box, but is really good in coverage as well, matches up well with tight ends, can also play over the top against wide receivers. He's aggressive when the ball's in the air, does pretty good job of knocking the ball out against wide receivers. I think Keanu Neal could come in, be a perfect complement to him in that Minnesota Vikings secondary. I would love to hear what you guys think in the chat about where Keanu Neal could be going if there's a team that I did miss. Sid and C is asking about the Seattle Seahawks. Welcome back again, Sid and C. You've been absolutely killing it with all the support for the channel. We really appreciate you here at Utility Sports. He wants to know if the Seahawks have the cap space for David Andrews, and yes, they do. The replacement of Vakella Witherspoon for Shaquille Griffin does leave enough money for a David Andrews possible signing. Now, will they go out and actually make that move? I'm not sold yet at that point if they do or not, but I do think that is a possible landing spot. Also look for the Seahawks to maybe gauge the interest of Rodney Hudson on going there to Seattle. Flashy YT says, if J.C. Jackson leaves the Patriots, do you think that we should push for Adoree Jackson or Desmond King? Actually, I don't necessarily think that unless a Stephon Gilmore trade is in the works. At this point, you brought in Jalen Mills. You already have Stephon Gilmore, and I trust Bill Belichick to find cornerbacks in the NFL draft, guys that are going to fit what you do as man-to-man guys, but also guys who are, intelligent football players, can work in zone coverage when you guys bring some of those zone blitz schemes. And I think that at this point, you don't need to necessarily go out and take a big-time move on an Adoree Jackson or Desmond King. I think filling in your roster now after spending all this money day one and day two, filling it in along the edges with some lower-end signings, some guys to really, round out this roster would be the better move. But I wouldn't be surprised necessarily if Bill Belichick says, here, hold my beer, I'm going to push my chips into the center. That could be something very possible. Confidence says Pats have $20 million in cap space left, by the way. Thank you for bringing that up. I was aware that they had a north of 15 or so million. I wasn't exactly sure on the exact number. So thank you for putting that in the chat here. Ali Click says, realist, apparently you aren't a realist because Watson is no doubt leaving. There is a new video up on the channel about Deshaun Watson possibly getting traded this offseason, where he could possibly land. Teams like Miami, the Dolphins are a real landing spot, the Carolina Panthers, Denver Broncos, another possibility. I would love to know where you guys think Deshaun Watson is going to go if he does get traded. I think the Houston Texans should look to move on from him. I think that situation is going to get really messy from a PR standpoint, and I think their fans are going to get fed up with the team they're putting around Deshaun Watson, and it might even get ugly to the point where Deshaun Watson says, hey, I'm going to threaten retirement just like Carson Palmer did with the Bengals, until Palmer ultimately got what he wanted, a trade out of Cincinnati. We'll see if Deshaun Watson goes down the same path or not. Burger Does Sports says thoughts on Kyle Fuller potentially getting cut and signing with the Broncos to reunite with Vic Fangio. I would actually love this for the Denver Broncos. Cornerback still a need even after bringing in Ronald Darby, I believe it was, on day one of free agency. And Kyle Fuller, a reunion with Vic Fangio, that's when he was at his best. Now, I think the Broncos still need a little bit more pass rush, even with Von Miller coming back. I think that they could use another edge in there, someone who's going to be a rotational piece to rotate off of Bradley Chubb and Von Miller, keep all the guys' legs fresh in that pass rush. But Kyle Fuller would be a severe upgrade at that cornerback position, and he plays his best football when Vic Fangio is calling the defensive plays there. Confidence says, Burger, if that happens, you would definitely be a contender. It really depends on what the Niners do first. If you're talking about a Deshaun Watson trade to the Denver Broncos, they would definitely be a team looked at in contention. They still have a lot of needs yet, though, on that team. They need to really address linebacker. Cornerback right now is a severe need yet. Expect for them to do something in the NFL draft about that now at this point. Raiders picked up Zay Jones. I did not see that. Thank you for bringing in that news, Kyler Crawford. Zay Jones, solid wide receiver option. I know he had been around. It's good to see him back there with the Las Vegas Raiders. T. Dellen back here asking about the Jacksonville Jaguars. Are they going to make any more moves? And they do actually have some free agent money still cleared up at this point. So they are a team that is very interesting to monitor. Let's go through some of the Jaguars moves that they've made I'm going to share my screen here so that you guys can see what I am seeing, just so we don't miss out on any of the moves. Let's share this for you guys. And here we go. Let's add this into the stream. There we go. So agreed to a deal with Carlos Hyde, someone who had ran for over 1,000 yards just 2 years ago with the Houston Texans. Now, I don't think that was a great move for them, but that is what they did. Jamal Agnew agreed to a 3-year deal worth up to $21 million, according to Mike Garafolo. That deal is one that I am not a fan of. He's a punt returner and former cornerback. It'll be interesting to see if the speed pays off at wide receiver. That was clearly their interest in making that move. Phil Dorsett, another guy they brought in, he came in with the Jaguars, another speedster, former first-round pick of the Indianapolis Colts, and they went and triple-dipped at wide receiver with Marvin Jones on a short-term deal, 2 years, $14 million there for Marvin Jones. I think that is a solid deal. I expected him to get north of about $8 or $9, $10 million possibly, and he settled for $7 million with the Jaguars. They've taken a lot of chances here in free agency on finding that third wide receiver to complement both DJ Chark and Laviska Shenault, and I think that they have a pretty good group of guys here that give them some versatility in what they're looking to do. Cam Robinson got franchise tagged. Tyler Shatley staying there in Jacksonville. But I really love what they've done to their defensive line. Dwayne Smoot, Tyson Alualu, Jihad Ward, trading for Malcolm Brown, which was a low-profile move, also signing Roy Robertson Harris. They killed it on their defensive line, and then they really came back and doubled down on their secondary. They re-signed Sidney Jones, added Shaquille Griffin, the top cornerback in free agency, in my opinion. Then they added 2 safeties, Rudy Ford, who's going to be more of a special teamer for them, but also safety Rayshon Jenkins from the Chargers. That is a low-risk, high-reward buy on a guy who maybe had a little bit quieter of a market. They might have overpaid him a little bit, but they bring in a young, talented safety, someone who's going to fit into their timeline. I would love to know what you guys think of the Jacksonville Jaguars moves up to this point. T. Dellenbeck says he could use O-line. I definitely agree. Maybe that's where the NFL draft comes in. Remember, you guys have the most assets in this year's NFL draft. Just because your free agency slowing down doesn't mean you guys are done making moves this offseason. Travis Davis says, is the bulk of Washington football team's cap space tied up in the cheerleader lawsuits? That is very funny there. I know the Washington football team's been a little quiet, made a big splash yesterday with William Jackson. Remember, they also franchise tagged Brandon Scherf earlier before free agency started. They're really moving in the right direction, in my opinion. I know that it had been a messy situation before Ron Rivera got in there, but everything they've done in the past year or so has really improved this football team since the draft pick of Chase Young, 2nd overall. I think this team is moving in the right direction. They got a great 7. They've addressed some of their secondary needs. I think they could still use a safety at this point, but they are killing the game lately. KX is asking, what's the Bills' cap situation? They don't have a lot after signing Emmanuel Sanders yesterday. I believe they're right around that cap threshold. They might have been able to restructure a deal or two that I haven't seen maybe yet to open up a little bit of money, but they're going to be pretty tight on the cap space. Not going to be a lot more moves there from Buffalo this offseason. Jay Mouse, one of our best recent subscribers, is asking, do you like that the 49ers re-signed Trent Williams and signed center Alex Mack? I don't like it. I really, really love it for the San Francisco 49ers. This was a phenomenal move by them. I know they paid Trent Williams a lot, and I get it. He's a little bit older at that tackle position, but nonetheless, this is a great situation for the San Francisco 49ers. Not only did they keep a big-time building block at that left tackle spot in Trent Williams, but they came in, brought in a center who works in Kyle Shanahan's system. They worked together there in Atlanta when he was calling plays as the offensive coordinator. Alex Mack had his best individual season at center with Kyle Shanahan there, and the two of them, Trent Williams and Alex Mack, are going to be key pieces on that offensive line for San Francisco. Sid and C says, bro, I love your channel. You make my day. That means so much. We really appreciate all the kind words that you guys have been sharing with us over the past few days here in free agency. Let me know right now in the comments, would you guys prefer during the NFL draft that we live stream, give our live reaction to everything that happens during the NFL draft? We're also going to be doing a ton more live streams between now and then, but we would like to know if you guys would be interested in an NFL draft live stream, something we're definitely interested in doing here on the channel. Ali A. Click says, I think any team that needs a linebacker gets Keanu because he expressed himself wanting to change to linebacker. You know, that's an interesting thing. I think Keanu is a player that could fit into that linebacker mold, especially as he goes through some of these injuries. You know, maybe loses a step, doesn't fit necessarily as good as a safety anymore. But at this point, I think he should still be looking for a contract to play as a safety, at least for 1 or 2 more years. And I think the Minnesota Vikings are the best situation for that. Nugget Master asks, any moves made by my AFC South rivals, the Colts and the Titans? Let's pull up the Colts here real quick. I think that they have been very quiet. The only thing that they have done this offseason is trading for Carson Wentz. They have not made any other moves at this point. They are sitting on $41 million, though, so look for them to continue to be patient and then ultimately jump on some free agents a little bit further into the free agency process. Here's what the Titans have done. They brought in tight end Jeff Swaim, also agreed to a 2-year contract with offensive tackle Kendall Lamb. Remember, they needed to find a replacement for Isaiah Wilson, who they traded to the Miami Dolphins. Kendall Lamb, a very good option there coming from the Cleveland Browns. Danico Autry, he got a pretty good payday himself. He is a solid defensive lineman. He's going to fit right into that 3-4 at the defensive end position. Bud Dupree, he's going to be the outside linebacker there, and he's going to come off the edge frequently as a pass rusher. Coming off a torn ACL, he got a very generous deal, something I didn't necessarily think was going to be out there for him. And they also brought in Janoris Jenkins. But remember, they have completely cleaned house at that cornerback position. They cut Malcolm Butler, they cut Adoree Jackson, and they had also moved on from the other cornerback there that we had talked about a little bit earlier on the channel, being Desmond King. Sorry, I just lost his name for 1 second there, guys. Bear with me a little bit here today. After streaming for about 11 hours the last 2 days, I'm losing my mind a little bit. I appreciate you guys being in here and putting up with me. Kyler Crawford says, what if we trade? Wait, if we trade Hudson, don't we get tons of cap back? At this point, he's already been released, so there is no way to trade him, and he wouldn't want to be traded either. That's going to be something that, it's a little counterintuitive saying, well, what if we traded him? A team wasn't going to inherit his cap situation. And also, when you have a longtime player, you want to do well by him. You want to do well by his agent. It's all about building relationships in the NFL. That's really how you get your foot in the door during some of these free agent negotiations. So the best thing that they could do once he requested to be released is just release him at that point. But that is kind of how it goes with some of these situations. Realist says, what? Signing Williams at that age is ludicrous. I understand some of the concerns about that. But think about this. Jason Peters, 7 years ago, no one was saying, oh, we should sign him to a long-term deal. And he's been one of the best tackles in the NFL the past 7 years. I understand that you want to be concerned about that. But at the same time, the next 3 years, Trent Williams is going to be easily one of the best tackles in the NFL. And there's always the possibility of restructuring with him later on, especially when his play declines. And on top of that, maybe he could kick into guard at some point when he ages. And you still have to restructure that contract. But he's going to be a good offensive lineman for the duration of his career, no matter how long he plays. Trey Boston and Desmond King to the Washington football team will make that defense elite, says Mega. Yeah, I definitely agree. They need to address their secondary. They've done so a little bit with William Jackson. Adding a safety and a safety/cornerback hybrid in Desmond King would really improve that team. They need to focus on that secondary, and that's exactly where they should be putting their emphasis because of how great that front seven is. Thank you so much for the comment there, Mega. We really do appreciate it. Sidon C says, yes, please, for the NFL live stream during the draft. That would be awesome if you guys would tune into that. That would be something that we can plan then. We will have that scheduled for you guys. We'll probably go live probably half hour before the NFL draft, maybe a little bit earlier. We'll probably give you a live mock draft even right before the NFL draft, our final version, if that would be something you guys are interested in. That could be something you do. On the channel here, T. Dellenbach asking, was Marvin Jones Jr. a smart pickup? I like the trio Jax has with the wide receiver depth. Yes, it was a very smart pickup. I think he's a very good complement to the pieces you already have. You get a real red zone threat, someone who can be an over-the-top receiver, and not just with speed, with his physicality, someone who boxes out cornerbacks well and is a really good option along the sideline for Trevor Lawrence to ultimately be the quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars. You need to pick up a guy like him, and he came in on a really good, cheap deal, and I was very surprised by his number. Burger Does Sports says Keanu at middle linebacker would be very interesting, to be honest. Yes, it would be. Denver Broncos would also be a good fit for Keanu Neal. Next to Justin Simmons, I think he'd be a good complement there at the safety spot, but there's also a huge linebacker need there for the Denver Broncos to address that run game. I know you brought Shelby Harris back on a very good deal but also adding in Keanu Neal could be an interesting situation. Kyron says he liked and subbed. Thank you so much, Kyron. That means so much. I know that a lot of you have hit that like and subscribe button, but if you haven't yet, make sure to do that right now. Give you 1 second here to go ahead and do that. That's all the time it takes. Absolutely free to you. And we have a free Trevor Lawrence jersey giveaway going on the channel. All you have to do to be entered is leave a comment on today's video, something most of you are already doing. You also have to be subscribed to the channel and leave a like on this live stream. If you guys could go ahead and do that for me right now, that would be so awesome, and it would get you entered in our jersey giveaway as we go. Edgar V here says, who do you think the Raiders are going to use as a replacement for Rodney Hudson? And at this point, that's an interesting a question there for the Raiders. I think that they could be looking a variety of ways. There's a few centers still out on the market. I would like to pull that up for you guys 1 second. But at the meantime, let's also take a look at who the Raiders have already at that center position there. They brought back Jonathan Hankins today too at the D tackle spot, which is one thing that I would like to point out to be a very good decision for them to bring back someone who's going to be a little impactful on that defensive line. I think that is a good grab for the Las Vegas Raiders to retain him. They need to focus on keeping some of their guys around, and that's what they're doing here with that. Let me pull up the Las Vegas Raiders depth chart here. I am just forgetting the name of their backup center that is probably going to take over the starting center duties this year. That is Andre James. I knew it started with an A and the last name started with a J. I have not seen Andre James play live yet. I'm fully aware of Rodney Hudson, what he's bringing to the table for a future team. I have not seen Andre James, especially not with any preseason games this past year. So I don't really know too much what he brings to the table. But John Gruden, Mike Mack, they have a better look at him than anyone else. Maybe they believe he can be their long-term center. It'll be interesting to see if they do make a move going forward. T. Dallenbach says, will you do a video like this for the draft? If so, that would make my day. Yes, we could definitely do a live stream for the NFL draft. That is April 25th, I believe, is the date of the NFL draft. I'm not exactly certain on that, though. It might be April 27th. I know it starts on a Thursday night, so that will be when we're live streaming. We could also do rounds 2 and 3 and also day 3, rounds 4 through 7, if you guys would be interested in that moving forward. Let's see here. We have T. Dallenbach saying Kyler has been cut. That is a funny joke there, but no, he has not. Soulful Crown says, I hope the New York Jets sign Curtis Samuel. That would be a perfect addition to what we already have. And I agree. I think Curtis Samuel would be the best fit to what the New York Jets now have at this point. We have Denzel Mims as one of our outside wide receivers. We added Corey Davis as another outside wide receiver with good vertical speed. Now, if you bring in a gadget guy like Curtis Samuel, I know we have Jamison Crowder, but Jamison Crowder is only on a 1-year deal left at this point. I think Curtis Samuel coming in would be not only a for sure improvement year 1, but he's also very young, 24 years old. He fits perfectly into the New York Jets timeline, which is probably a little bit slower of a rebuild, but I would like the addition. Trent is very skeptical, saying that no way the Jets do sign Curtis Samuel. They already have Jamison Crowder, and I do agree that it is very unlikely at this point that we actually do sign Curtis Samuel, but I would love that. I would actually like that a lot more than the Corey Davis signing, just based on what the talent is. I think Curtis Samuel is just a better player than Corey Davis. I hope Corey Davis proves me wrong, but as a Jets fan, I'm kind of skeptical of the signing of him. Let me know what you think about the Corey Davis signing with the New York Jets. I'm interested to hear your guys' thoughts on that. Angel Hernandez says, do you think the Patriots can afford Will Fuller? They have $24 million in cap space. Yes, they could afford Will Fuller. Technically, they have enough money this year in terms of what their cap hits have been with some of these other contracts to open up a spot for him. But at the same time, you have to remember Will Fuller is probably looking for a multi-year deal, and the Patriots pushing off some of the cap hits on some of these other guys make it a little more complicated to bring in some of the other players in free agency, like a guy like Will Fuller. And really, it's just kind of a tough situation, what we could see for the New England Patriots. I just don't know if they're going to be able to pull that off. But like you said, they do have quite a bit of money yet at this point, between $17 and $24 million. Brandon Verdon here says, Andre James, thank you for name dropping him for me. I was having a momentary lapse of my mind. With Allier Clicks, he says, with $50 million plus in cap space still with the Jets, do you see the Jets trading Mosley, clearing up even more cap, and picking up someone like Keanu? I don't necessarily think Keanu would be in the books for the New York Jets at this point. I think that we feel pretty solid about our safety situation. We just take Marcus May. We have until July 15th to work out a long-term extension with him, what he's going to provide on the for the New York Jets. And we also have Ashton Davis, who we drafted last year as the long-term replacement for Jamal Adams. I think that those two, in Marcus May and Ashton Davis, are going to be the future safeties. And I understand that Keanu could fit physically at the linebacker spot, but I don't necessarily think Keanu Neal would be the move. I think instead they would actually prefer to go with a guy like Jayon Brown, who's a free agent from the Tennessee Titans, 26 years old. I think he would be a really good acquisition. We have already signed Jared Davis, and I think Jared Davis would function very well as an off-ball linebacker. The issue is Jayon Brown does as well as an off-ball linebacker, so maybe that fit isn't necessarily as great at this point, but it has kind of the situation to monitor there with the New York Jets having the most cap space still in free agency. Scotty Pimpin, someone who's been in the stream all week long, says, great work this week. Peace. Well, thank you so much for stopping in the stream, Scotty. We appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to come here, talk some football with us at Utility Sports. It means so much for us now. Let's see here. Okay, so we're just talking about Hudson. Nicholas Goodall says, hi, guys. Congrats for your awesome work so far in free agency. David Andrews heading to Miami. That was the first thing I thought when Ted Karras officially signed with the New England Patriots. I think David Andrews and the Miami Dolphins ultimately do get something done. Nicholas, welcome back to the stream. I know you were in here a little bit earlier this week as well. It's awesome having you in here, and I do think that David Andrews is heading to Miami. Benji Films, one of our best subscribers, says, hey, guys, hope I get that awesome Trevor Lawrence jersey. What should the Giants do, and what do you think about the AJ Green deal with the Cardinals? Giants should still be looking for a wide receiver at this point. I know that they added they added John Ross on a very good contract, 1 year, $2.5 million deal, approved deal for him. But I still think that they need to put in a little bit more work at wide receiver. Juju Smith-Schuster is the wide receiver option I would love for them. I think he's the best option, but it sounds like they're more tied to Kenny Golladay than Juju at this point. I wonder if Juju's Corvette situations kind of played a little bit of a hiccup into his free agent market. Maybe teams don't want someone who's being perceived as a little bit of a distraction, although I think that's kind of an unfair mark on him. He's trying to build up his brand, not necessarily being a cancer in the locker room. There's a big difference between those things, but they might just not want the distraction of Juju Smith-Schuster. Maybe that slowed down his possible free agent market, and he's had two, down years compared to what his rookie season really provided there in Pittsburgh. And my thoughts on the AJ Green deal, I think it's a slight overpay based on what his recent performance is, but it's a low-risk move. It's only 1 year deal. You get to bring in a veteran wide receiver who's going to function as a tertiary option as a pass catcher in that offense. I think that they should still look for a tight end, someone who's a real pass-catching threat. But at this point, adding AJ Green, he's going to be a nice complement piece to DeAndre Hopkins and also Christian Kirk there in Arizona. Trayvon, welcome to the stream. What's good, my guy? If you did want to stop in here, you definitely could. Just let me know in the chat what is good. Mikey, welcome back to the stream. He says, hey, man, good show. Akello Witherspoon was signed by the Seattle Seahawks. Any chance we make a move for Orlando Brown? That's a great question. Orlando Brown, he's going to be one of the most attainable offensive tackles here in the trade market, and he is a really good young player at that tackle position. I think he's an interesting name to monitor, but ultimately I don't think the Seahawks are the team to make a move for him. They don't have their first round pick this year. It would just be surprising if they are able to find out a cap situation that really works well with Orlando Brown there in Seattle, and also finding the requisite trade pieces that they need to put together in order to get him from the Baltimore Ravens. Sid and C wants to know who would be more expensive, Rodney Hudson or David Andrews. I think David Andrews is going to be a little bit more expensive. Rodney Hudson, coming off of a pretty good contract, still going to get paid by the Las Vegas Raiders this year with that dead money. He has made bank over his career. David Andrews probably looking for a pretty good contract now once he hits free agency. After looking at the Patriots offers, he decided none of them were good enough for him. he ultimately decided he's going to move on from New England. I think he gets a slight contract upgrade over what Rodney Hudson gets there moving forward. Scotty Pimpin wants to know, are the Cardinals contending with AJ Green? I think that they are right on the border of being teams that are a team that's a contender. It's hard to say that they're not because they're a very good team, but also that division is just so tough. You've got Seattle, you've got the Los Angeles Rams, who really improved bringing in Matthew Stafford this offseason. They're also able to keep pass rusher Leonard Floyd. And then you also have the San Francisco 49ers, who are going to be hopefully healthy this year and returning to glory as a team that wants to be a playoff team. That is a tough division. I could see the Cardinals missing the playoffs, and I could also see them finishing second in that division, being a really good football team, maybe at 12-5 or 13-4 with the new 17-game season. That is my situation. I don't think that AJ Green necessarily plays into that. I think JJ Watt is the bigger acquisition for the Cardinals, but either way, I think that they could be looked at as a very good team. Isaac Herrera says the Raiders are currently looking for someone to trade for Hudson before releasing him. Yeah, but I just don't think that's actually going to get done. He is not going to be a guy that gets traded. That's just not how the situation is going to work with the contract. T. Dellenback asked, do you think the Jags still have a chance at a tier 2 player like Desmond King or Jadeveon Clowney? Yes, I do think that they still have a shot, especially with a guy like Desmond King, if they're looking to address that safety position a little bit more. He would be a nice complement piece to Rashawn Jenkins there. Jadeveon Clowney, I don't think that they're in anymore on an edge. They've already spent a lot of money on that defensive line. Jadeveon Clowney, I just don't know if they see him being that guy coming in. I think that they're actually probably focusing on Kayvon Chason and Josh Allen being their two true pass rushers, which I think is the right direction for them. They've really focused on bringing in run-stopping defensive linemen to complement those two pass rushers. Kayvon Chason, I know some people think he had a disappointing rookie year. He had a ton of quarterback hurries and pressures down the stretch of the season. Watch for Kayvon Chason to be one of those guys who really starts to accelerate his career pace rapidly over the next 2 seasons in the NFL there in Jacksonville. I think he's going to blow up moving forward. Brandon Verd wants to know, how much money do the Raiders have left? I have the over-the-cap situation here. They have about $16 million, just a little bit less than that, to spend in free agency. I'm interested to see where they do put their money. I think that they would be best suited putting it into a safety and also a cornerback, but we'll see which direction they actually go moving forward. Benji Film says, I like the video, and what should the Giants do? Okay, yep. So he asking about what the Giants should do. I think that they should prioritize the wide receiver position, like I was talking a little bit earlier. A Human says, I am really happy about Corey Davis. He was one of the receivers I liked. Okay, so A Human likes the Corey Davis signing. I'm interested to hear what part of it you like. I think he's more of a wide receiver too, and I think the Jets don't have the good enough infrastructure around him. Now, if we drafted Jamar Chase, pick 2 on draft night, Corey Davis would be a beast as a wide receiver 2 option. But at this point, wide receiver 1, Corey Davis, I'm less in love with that. But I understand, he does make us better for sure. It's just I'm not sure if he makes us, $12.5 million better. That's kind of my concern with it. Raiders re-signing Good to a 2-year deal. Yes, they did. They brought back one of their own there. So that is a good news for the Las Vegas Raiders. Eddie Lento here saying Corey Davis made it known he was a vet and AJ is the rook. A+ for that one. That is an interesting comment there. Thank you for that. I like Labs and Beagles. Welcome back to the stream again today. He said he talks about the Raiders signing offensive lineman Denzel Good as well. He'll probably be a starting tackle for them. Fade to Black wants to know, are the Raiders drafting a quarterback? If they draft a quarterback, this whole thing's going to burn up in smoke. That would be a terrible situation for the Las Vegas Raiders. They can't afford to spend their first-round pick on a quarterback. If they trade Marcus Mariota, maybe day 3 they come in, find a guy that they want to add as a depth quarterback behind Derek Carr. But at this point, they have so many needs on that defense. They have to address safety, cornerback. They still need another edge. Even with Yannick Ngakoue going to Las Vegas, they also could use a little bit more interior defensive line help. And I'm not even sold on their linebackers, Nick Kwiatkowski and also Corey Littleton. I'm just not sold there. They have a lot of work to do. If they draft a QB early on in the draft, I think this is going to be a nightmare situation for Las Vegas. Bone here says, any news on Washington? Not quite yet. They made news last night, made headlines with William Jackson going to Washington. He joins the football team there. Got a pretty good payday, and he's going to be a very nice player for them in that secondary. So far, they've been quiet today, but we'll see if they do make any news moving forward. Hot Sauce Junkie Tim says, Arizona signing AJ Green. If he can get back to the old AJ, wow, what a great signing. Most definitely, if he could get back to the old AJ Green, what we saw kind of in 2015, 2016, that would be ridiculous. He'd be a great signing, and the Arizona Cardinals would have the best wide receiver room in the NFL. But that was about 5 years ago. We're talking half a decade. He's not going to get back to that form. He's had multiple surgeries since then. He's just not that same player. Does he still have an impact? For sure. I think he can be a nice complementary piece for the Arizona Cardinals. Let's see here. Nugget Master says Corvette talking about Juju Smith-Schuster. Very funny. JRX, welcome to the stream. Glad to have you in here, my guy. One of our best subscribers here on the channel. Alicia Bell brings up the AJ Green going to Arizona. Yes, that has been one of the bigger news-breaking things of the day that is been going on. That's pretty much the only move that Arizona's made in the last day or so after losing out on Corey Linsley. Look for them to probably address the center spot as well, too, if they want to really improve that football team. I think that's going to be an area they'll probably take a close look at. David Andrews. They lost out on Alex Mack. He went to the 49ers. We'll see which direction they go in free agency. Mikey wants to know what other options are out there at O-line for the Seattle Seahawks. Appreciate your input on my last question. Definitely, Mikey. Love answering your guys' questions. You guys have been coming at it all week with phenomenal questions. We really appreciate what you are bringing here to Utility Sports. It means so much having your guys' comments and questions here for us to go through. What other options are out there at O-line for the Seahawks? Well, I was just talking about David Andrews. I think that he would be a great option for the Seattle Seahawks. However, he's going to be a little bit expensive. Russell Okung, he's also out there. Former Panther, former New York Jet. He could be a solid option for the Seattle Seahawks at that tackle position. Daryl Williams still out there. Ty Nsekhe, a former Bill tackle, signed with the Dallas Cowboys just yesterday. He could be a solid option for them now. Daryl Williams, that is, playing the tackle position. And also look for them to look along that interior offensive line with a guy like Rodney Hudson. I think that those are the solid options for the Seattle Seahawks now at this point. T. Dellenbeck wants to know, will you be doing this tomorrow? More than likely, we will have a live stream tomorrow. It might be tomorrow night. It might be tomorrow during the day. For those of you who don't know, I do teach a little bit as well. So that is kind of a concern for me during the day. Sometimes I have to kind of try and plan out my day a little bit more and work that out with coming on here at Utility Sports. But I love doing it for you guys. Nothing else I'd rather be doing right now. He says, yeah, I already have Kelsey. No need for that position. Must be time about the Chiefs and the tight end. Burger Does Sports says, one singular human agrees with the Davis signing. Yeah, talking about Corey Davis. Yeah, no kidding. Most people aren't in love with that signing. Myself being one of the loud ones, really not in love with it. Confidence says he has to agree that Corey Davis is way better than you think. You know, I understand he played very well this year. I'm not saying he didn't, but there's a reason Tennessee declined his fifth-year option. Okay, that doesn't happen very often for quality wide receivers drafted in the first round. Laquan Treadwell is another example of a guy who had his fifth-year option declined. That's not a good group to be a part of. Now, did Corey Davis pick it up this year with Ryan Tannehill throwing him the ball? Sure. But if Sam Darnold's throwing the ball to him next year, I mean, let's be real about it. That's not a good situation. We'll have to see what we do at quarterback. I ultimately think Zach Wilson will be the franchise quarterback for the New York Jets. I'm starting to fall in love with that pairing with him, with that LaFleur offense there in New York, coming over with Robert Saleh. I think that could be the best way for our franchise to build up. We'll see if that's ultimately what happens to go on here, though. King Aladdin says, hi, everyone. Welcome to the stream, King Aladdin. Super happy to have you in here. Means a lot having all the support from you guys. You guys have been absolutely killing it lately. Since he says, yes, Okung is a former Seahawk. I'm aware he could come back in and be a solid option for them at that tackle position. Alicia Bell says, I'm a Jets fan. Hope we get Sherman, another defensive player. Yes, we need to definitely go out and get Richard Sherman. I think he is the best possible acquisition for a variety of reasons. One, former player of Robert Saleh for the 49ers. There is that obvious clear connection there. He speaks highly of Robert Saleh. Robert Saleh speaks very highly of Richard Sherman. And I think on a short 1-year deal, he would be worth bringing in. Could be an outside cornerback for us year one. Also is a really good voice in the locker room and would be a really good mentor for a guy like Bryce Hall, who we drafted last year. Bryce Hall looking like one of those guys who maybe could work out from Joe Douglas's first draft with the New York Jets. And I think Richard Sherman would be a very good mentor for him. Jar X wants to know, what do you think about Emmanuel Sanders to the Bills? That's a great question there. I think Emmanuel Sanders, like I was kind of saying with AJ Green rather, very good tertiary wide receiver option for a team where he's not going to be relied on to be a 1 or a 2 target. Cole Beasley, Stephon Diggs are going to be the lead dogs there for Buffalo. Now I'm just interested to see if Buffalo tries to find a tight end. Pat Freiermuth could make some sense out of Penn State. During the NFL draft, we'll see if at pick 30, the Bills do feel like pulling the trigger there. But I think Emmanuel Sanders is a very good grab for them. He came in on a pretty cheap deal, $6 million a year only on a short-term contract, and I think he'll be a nice option for Josh Allen in the pass game. Trent N says, Bucs re-signing offensive guard Aaron Stinney, who started the final 3 playoff games, including the Super Bowl. Is that breaking news? I have not seen that myself yet. I have not been really checking my phone as of late, though. There is actually an NBA trade going on as we speak. For those of you who don't know, NBA basketball is actually my favorite sport, but I really do love talking NFL football as well. Very interesting as we see an NBA trade going on during our NFL live stream. Bucs re-signing offensive guard Aaron Stinney, though, that is a solid move. Keep some of that offensive depth on that offensive line. You can never have too many offensive linemen that are worth rotating in. Douglas Anderson wants to know, any word yet on the top receivers here in the NFL? Free agency, not quite yet. What I'm hearing is it's a very slow market for those wide receivers. It hasn't really developed up to this point. There's not a lot of contracts out there. Some executives aren't even looking at Kenny Golladay as the number 1 wide receiver option. Don't want to pay him wide receiver 1 money. I completely understand that. Juju Smith-Schuster hasn't been a lot of words surrounding him, a lot of rumors. It's been pretty dry from his front. And Curtis Samuel, I'm very surprised that he has not been picked up. I thought he was going to be one of the hottest names in free agency. I thought he was going to be a guy gone on day one. Instead, he is still out on the market. I'm very interested to see which way they go and find out which teams really grabs these wide receivers. Brandon Kesey says, since Telvin Smith has been found not guilty in his off-field trouble issues, do you see him coming back to Jacksonville if he unretires? No, I don't think he comes back to Jacksonville. We've had a complete turnover of that front office. Obviously, new GM, new head coach. I would be surprised if Telvin Smith has a home in Jacksonville. And I'd also be very surprised if Telvin Smith plays another snap of football, to be completely honest. It's been about 3-4 years since we've really seen him. And I would be very surprised if he does have a market. At this point, I want to welcome in special guest Trayvon Chris Robertson. What is it doing? Trayvon, how you doing today?
Good. How are you? Woke up to some crazy news. 49ers just throwing out the bag for a 32-year-old man. It was crazy.
Yeah, Trent Williams did get the bag today. I know you're a little bit more skeptical of that deal than I am, Trayvon. What are your thoughts on Trent Williams?
Jaylen Brown is going to the Texans.
Jayon Brown to the Texans?
Excuse me, the Titans. The Titans.
Oh, the Titans. Okay. The Titans.
On a 1-year deal worth $5.2 million.
That's it for Jayon Brown?
That's it.
Wow, 1 year, $5.2 million. Kind of a prove-it deal. I'm surprised he didn't get a little bit more money. Linebacker class has been very slow in free agency. He goes back to the Tennessee Titans, rather. That's a good retention there for Seattle or for Tennessee. They badly needed to keep one of their own guys after losing their entire secondary.
Apparently, he turned down offers to return to reset his market following his injury season last year. So he's gone back and is taking that approach that we said at the beginning of free agency, just doing a 1-year deal. So when the market is healthy again, he'll test free agency once again.
Yeah, he'll come back. Look for him to be a guy who maybe gets $8 or $9 million per year in free agency next offseason. But Trayvon, what are your thoughts on the Trent Williams signing? I love it, especially when paired with Alex Alex Mack. I think the 49ers are going to be one of the best offensive lines in football for the next 2 or 3 years, probably. What's your thoughts, though, on the amount that they paid?
Yeah, of course. I mean, obviously, I don't think that's what they would like to have paid, but I think it was super important, obviously, for them to keep him. So that's what they had to do. They had to pay him $23 million annually. And, obviously pairing him with Alex Mack, I think that was obviously an amazing signing. And like you said, they have probably one of the best offensive lines in football now. Just with that signing alone, it's pretty crazy. But it's going to be interesting to see for sure how productive he can be, going into the upwards of north of 32. So it's just gonna be interesting. This 6 years, that's the thing that surprises me. You have him until he's 38,
Right.
which is just
it's a long-term commitment. I keep likening it to Jason Peters there in Philadelphia, though. He's been very productive, and he's 39 years old now. He's been productive over the last 7 years, only missed 1 year with injury during that time. And if Trent Williams follows the same trajectory, that's a very good contract still. If he stays at the level he's at right now for the next 3-4 years, that's well worth it. But there is a little bit of risk involved as well with that contract. Martina Davies here says, do you see the Dolphins taking one of the receivers still available in free agency? And where do you see Miami getting their center from free agency or the draft? At this point, Miami is in the driver's seat in a lot of different ways. They have about $30 million. They're also waiting on a Deshaun Watson trade possibility. We have a video up on the channel covering Deshaun Watson, possible landing spots. I think Miami is one of the best situations for him. They're an up-and-coming team. They have Tua Tagovailoa, who's going to be a valuable piece for a Houston Texans rebuild if those negotiations do really open up. At this point, it sounds like the Texans are reluctant to talk trade, but Deshaun Watson might ultimately really put his foot in the ground, say he might retire, and that could open up a pathway for the Dolphins. But when it comes to the wide receivers, I think Juju Smith-Schuster would be a really good acquisition in terms of what his age is, his timeline. I also think Curtis Samuel, kind of acting as a gadget guy with really good speed, could be a great fit there in Miami. And I ultimately do think that Miami is going to address center. I'm not sure if it's going to be free agency or the draft. David Andrews is a guy I thought immediately, once the Patriots added Ted Karras back into the mix there, that David Andrews would flip over to Miami and be the starting center for the Miami Dolphins. I would love that move for them. But also, if they did wait to the draft, there's a few good options, Landon Dickerson being one of them from Alabama, also Trey Smith from Tennessee. I would like either of those guys as the Miami Dolphins starting center moving forward. They would just have to pull the trigger on that in the draft. They have a ton of assets, though. That would not be a problem for Miami. Jacob Ross says, for the New York Jets, what would it take for Deshaun Watson? Well, the first word I'll say is a miracle. It would take a miracle for us to get Deshaun Watson just because I just don't think Joe Douglas is really looking in that direction at this point. It kind of seems like all the buzz of Deshaun Watson to the New York Jets has quieted down. I would absolutely love that situation. He is one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. And I think that in order to get him, you're going to look at giving up at least 3, maybe 4 first-round picks. It'd probably take this year pick 2, pick 21, probably pick 34 as well, the top end of the second-round pick. Probably have to throw Marcus May back or maybe Quinnen Williams, whichever one of those two they would prefer. And then also you're looking at a next year first. That's kind of where the starting point probably comes for Houston. Otherwise, they're going to hang up the phone on you. King Aladdin, I've seen you do this a couple times. Let's not be telling our other viewers that their team sucks. And in fact, the Seattle Seahawks are a very good team. So just please don't be doing that here on the channel. We don't really appreciate that very much. Thank you for knocking that off. Hot sauce junkie Tim says, will the Packers address a number 2 wide receiver in free agency, or is Funchess the guy? That's an interesting situation. Devin Funchess was an opt-out last year. A lot of people forgot he was there in Green Bay. I think that he's going to be their number 2 guy past free agency, but now the NFL draft, maybe that's when they address the number 2 wideout position. They just don't have a lot of money. They had to restructure today. It was Darius Smith to open up the money to even re-sign running back Aaron Jones there. They just don't have the money for a wide receiver at this point in free agency. Kyle says, when free agency is official, do you expect we'll see a bunch of deals coming in rapidly or think it will still be slow moving? That's a great question there, Kyle. Thank you for putting this one in there. So once some of these contracts are official, we'll get a really good picture of what the cap hit situation looks like for some teams. But I still don't think it's going to ultimately adjust the speed of some of these signings. Teams are going to still be hesitant, patient, especially with the reduced cap space this year. They are going to be a little cautious of locking themselves into some contracts. We'll see if the logjam at wide receiver opens up. That itself could open up a flurry of deals in free agency. But at this point, I just don't think that it's going to start to really speed up free agency too much. I think we're kind of in for a week long of good free agency coverage. And remember, we just had the best free agent signed today on day 3 in Trent Williams. He finally came to a deal. Free agency is still very important at this point. There's still a lot of good players on the board. So I know it's been a little slower today, but the patience makes every move even more valuable as they come in. That is one thing to remember. Realist says Miami just might go after Hudson once he's officially let go by the Raiders. I think that is a real option too. Rodney Hudson's going to have a really good market out there, probably on some shorter-term deals, 1 or 2 year deals is my guess at this point. Trayvon, what do you think about Rodney Hudson, where he could land?
Well, apparently he hasn't been released just yet, and they're looking to trade him. So, I mean, if they're willing to give up a couple picks, I don't think that it would cost any more than like a fifth or something like that, given the fact that he's 30. But, you look at it, and Miami could definitely come to fold again. The Cardinals still, they're looking for a center. Maybe they create some cap space trying to move some pieces around, because obviously they went super hard at Corey Linsley and ultimately struck out. But, like Miami is a good place. I think Seattle is a good place as well. Just a lot of places that need a veteran offensive lineman that could look to help. You look at a team like maybe Atlanta as well. They just lost to Alex Mack, so that could be a perfect sign to get a little bit younger and around the same level playing field. Obviously, Mack better over a career term, but Hudson isn't far off at all.
Yeah, Hudson's going to be a very nice center on the market for sure once he gets on there. I would be surprised if a team does trade for him, just given the situation with Vegas kind of already showing their hand, saying, oh, we're releasing him, and then kind of going back on it and saying, oh, well, at this point, we're going to look to trade him real quick. It just tends to not really work out where a team does agree to trade for a guy who had already been rumored to be released. It just kind of doesn't happen very often.
No. People will just wait, and then they'll just when it's on the market.
They'll try and get him on free agency. Hot Sauce Junkie Tim says, for your information, I subscribed to you just now. Thank you so much, Hot Sauce Junkie Tim. Love having you as one of our subscribers. You guys have been absolutely killing it in terms of hitting that subscribe button. If I could urge each and every one of you right now to subscribe if you haven't already, that would be magnificent. Everybody Hates Chris, a wonderful TV show, says a Chargers should look at Adoree Jackson. Trayvon, I know you're a big fan of that. What's your thoughts on an Adoree Jackson to Los Angeles type of move?
I think they definitely should be looking that direction again. Brandon Staley prides himself on versatility, and having an athlete such as Adoree Jackson on the team certainly makes sense. Whether you want to line up in the slot or outside, or even play him at free safety. Again, Brandon Staley's defense is really about like almost positionless football. It's weird in a sense to say that about football, because that's more like a basketball term, but it's really that's what he prides himself on, his versatility. Like he likes his players to be able to do multiple things and move them around in different parts. But Adoree should be on, I think, every team's radar, really, when you think at it. Maybe he just struggled a little bit there in Tennessee, but again, he's super young and he's super fast, and those corners normally go like that off the market. So I wouldn't be surprised to see many people trying to bid for his services.
Right, most definitely. Adoree Jackson, sure, he had a little bit of inconsistency there in Tennessee, but I think he should be looked at as the top cornerback available now at this point. Just kind of with what the situation is, he's extremely athletic. He is a very young player still yet at this point. Hit free agency a year earlier than expected as well, and really was only just a cap casualty because his $10.4 million money this year was going to be guaranteed today had the Titans not released him yesterday. That's why they made that move. He's going to be a great option and a great pickup for whatever team pulls the trigger. I hope my New York Jets spend some $51 million cash on Adoree Jackson. Yes, Trayvon, bring us in with something here.
It's not even news. It's just saying something. One cornerback that is on the market, but it's not really on the market, is J.C. Jackson. They only put a second-round tender on him. Yep. If I'm any team that needs a cornerback, I would immediately pay it just like that. That guy's coming off a season where he had 9 interceptions. Like that is unheard of and phenomenal. And I think that like the Chargers should definitely look to given the fact of it would only cost you a second round, and you were looking at a second-round cornerback in the first place. He's much better than any second-round cornerback that you could possibly get in this draft. I would immediately and like put him right in that role. He's somebody that can be a shutdown corner, especially in Bill Belichick's system. I wouldn't be surprised if he stays. You see him get into that Stephen Gilmore level of talent for sure.
Right, J.C. Jackson, a reunion in there in New England does make sense if Stephon Gilmore does find a trade where he is no longer a New England Patriot. Otherwise, I think that is kind of a pick-em there for New England, especially with bringing Jalen Mills in. They're kind of in a tough situation. They spent a lot of money on offense. They also addressed their nose tackle position. It doesn't come without consequences. J.C. Jackson would be a tough loss for them.
I don't know why they just put a second round.
I thought he was going to be a lock for a first-round tender myself. That's why we haven't talked about him here on the channel, because it was like almost like you said, it's almost like he's not on the market. But today he opened himself up on the market, and the Patriots, I think, are making a mistake here.
I think they're making a big mistake. If I'm any team that needs a cornerback, I'm calling and I'm giving them that second round pick, and I'm not thinking twice about it, to be honest.
Right, for sure. Now the big question is, not only do you have to give up that second round pick, that is, a pretty important part, but you're also going to have to give him a massive payday. He's going to be well north of $12 million, in my opinion. He's probably going to be a guy who gets, looking at what Shaquille Griffin got, he probably gets an extra $1 million a year at least. On top of that.
If I was any team that needed a cornerback, I would give it to him. You know what I'm saying?
I do agree. I do agree with you. Yes. I think that J.C. Jackson, not only did he prove himself to be a playmaker with the takeaways last year, but on top of that, he's a guy who I really, really do trust that he could lock up on number one wide receivers. I mean, I've had a really close look at him the last 3 years in New England. And, 2.5 years ago, I started saying, wow, this guy's starting to impress me a lot. Well before any media was on him, well before anything else, I was like, okay, this J.C. Jackson kid's pretty good. 2 years ago, he started to really prove himself. I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is really, really good. And this year, it turned into he is phenomenal. He is one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL, in my estimation. I was so surprised that he didn't get a first-round tender. And I think the New York Jets, who badly need a cornerback, I mean, if you're the Jets, you're going to probably take one in your first 3 picks this year anyway, whether that's pick 21 or pick 34. You're probably going to pull the trigger there on a cornerback. Why not just give up pick 34 for someone you already know is great in the NFL and an interdivision pull from the Patriots? Luke Fade here says, was signing Cam a mistake for the New England Patriots? No, I don't think so. I think that a lot of people are sleeping on Cam Newton as a player in the NFL. Now, is he a guy you can win a Super Bowl with? No, I just don't think so. But not every team is always in a position to win the Super Bowl, and you can't judge every single player on if he wins you a Super Bowl or not, because 31 of the 32 teams don't win a Super Bowl. It's just, sure, when you're looking at him compared to a guy like Tom Brady, who the Patriots have been spoiled with for 2 decades, he's just not going to measure up to that. But last year, that roster was void of talent on the offensive side of the football. He'll have a much better year throwing the football. And remember, he didn't have a mini camp. He didn't have OTAs. He didn't have a preseason to even learn that offense. He got thrusted into that situation, and he did okay. And I think this year we're going to see a lot better play from him in New England. T. Dellenbach says, do you expect Alex Smith to sign with the Jaguars? I know it'll be a little while because he wants to play out their camp, but I think personally it will happen. Yes, I do think that as well. I think ultimately the Jaguars trade Gardner Minshew to a team for probably a 3rd or 4th round pick is my estimation, maybe a little bit lower. Doug Marrone did a real number to his trade value. He was worth at least a 2nd round pick at the start of the year. Doug Marrone benching him for Mike Glennon, which is the most mind-numb thing a head coach has ever done in the NFL. Really hurt his value, maybe even pulls it down to a 5th or 6th round pick in a trade, but I do think Alex Smith will be the Jacksonville Jaguars backup going into next season. Maria Guzman asks, how do the Browns get to 11 wins again? They need linebackers, DNs, at least 2 more corners, and they might lose Higgins at wide receiver. Well, one big thing they did was bring in John Johnson. You went from perhaps one of the worst starting safeties in the NFL in Andrew Sendejo to one of the better ones in John Johnson III. That is a big upgrade there for Cleveland. And they have a whole bunch of picks this year as well. Pick 26, you probably go with a guy like Zaven Collins. He's a guy who could be a versatile linebacker or edge option for you from Tulsa. I think he would be a good grab. Maybe a guy like Azeez Ojulari in round 2 or Joseph Osai, who's kind of falling down boards because some of his struggles against a guy like Tevin Jenkins from Oklahoma State. I think those two guys would be good additions onto that defense. And, Greedy Williams, if you get a healthy Greedy Williams, that cornerback room is much better off than it has been the last couple of years just because of some of the injuries that they've had to deal with. Christian Settle here asking where Kenny Galladay is going. Trayvon and I have been very vocal that we think it's probably Washington or the New York Giants. We think Washington being the better fit, but the Giants really having a need at wide receiver and being willing to possibly spend some money even after giving Leonard Williams a surprising 3-year, $63 million deal. Trayvon, what was your thoughts on Leonard Williams' 3-year, $63 million?
It's a lot of money, but again, it's just something that you have to do in order to like up your players. Sometimes you just have to overpay, and this year is no different, especially given the scarcity of the market and how the market has played out. They had to, so it's obviously they need to keep their own. They traded for him for a reason, and this was the reason. Like they knew they eventually have to pay this guy.
Yes, definitely. Most definitely that is the case. Maria Guzman asks, is John Brown really on the Las Vegas Raiders? Yes, he is. He came to agreement on what I believe to be a 1-year deal today with the Las Vegas Raiders. They're addressing a little bit of their wide receiver room after cutting Tyrell Williams earlier on this offseason. Jackson Autry says, AFC East is going to be exciting 100%, especially if the New York Jets draft Zach Wilson and trade Sam Darnold. You're looking at real acquisition of talent through the draft for the New York Jets, being the bottom feeder of that division. They're going to improve pretty significantly after this NFL offseason is done. They've already done so a little bit with Corey Davis, Carl Lawson. They still have a lot of money to spend, have pretty good draft pick capital here this offseason as well to really improve this football team. Joe Douglas is going to have a shot to get a lot better, but with them being the bottom feeder, it's much more important talking about the Patriots getting all these new fun weapons. They're going to be an exciting team to watch with Cam Newton, in my opinion. The Buffalo Bills, one of the best teams in football. Sean McDermott, one of the best coaches. They've really put the thing up the right way. Josh Allen, he continues to surprise me. I was much lower on him, to be honest with you guys. Trayvon, more of a believer of Josh Allen than I was. Perhaps it's that New York bias, but that's how it's going to be. And also the Miami Dolphins, one of those young and upcoming teams that I think have one of the best trajectories in the NFL moving forward. Tons of assets, already a good football team, a magnificent coach in Brian Flores. That AFC East is going to be very exciting. Big Toe wants to know what receivers and corners should Tennessee go for. The Titans obviously lost out on their 3 starting cornerbacks this past year in Desmond King, Malcolm Butler, and also Adoree Jackson, releasing a majority of those guys. And they also lost Corey Davis to the New York Jets. And the Titans are an interesting team. I think that they could be a team to go after a little bit more of age in free agency to try and save money at that cornerback position. They already brought in Janoris Jenkins. I thought that was a solid move for them. Patrick Peterson could be an option, maybe Richard Sherman as well, although I think they would like to try and stick to maybe more man-to-man guys. So Pat Pete being a possible lead candidate there. Trayvon, do you see any receivers going to Tennessee? I think that market's going to be a little interesting for them.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting for them as well. Again, you said that they lost all their starting corners, so that's already like a big red flag that they could be looking to address during the draft. That's obviously an option. And the draft for receiver as well. Again, this receiving class is very extremely deep. You can get starters in the 3rd, 4th, and maybe even 5th rounds. Right. So they'll definitely be interesting to see wide receiver that's on the market right now. I mean, could we maybe see them make a play for Kenny Galladay or Juju? That remains to be seen. I think they're a little bit out of their price range, personally. But I mean, you look at there's receivers on the market. I believe, given the fact of let me just check the wide receivers right now, real quick. There is T.Y., Golden Tate, Deshaun Jackson, Sammy Watkins, Cordell Patterson, Keenan Cole, maybe a Will Fuller, but again, I think he's a little bit out of their price range. Could be a Curtis Samuel, a more of a gadget type player. So there's a couple people on the market still. You know what I'm saying? It's nothing outside of Kenny Galladay and Juju. There's nobody big name. But I mean, if you consider Ty a big name still, I mean, him switching teams in the division would be a headline as well.
Well, one guy that really stuck out to me there that you had named was Sammy Watkins. I think that Tennessee would be smart to maybe take a little bit of a risk on a guy who's been injured the past few years, hasn't really been available throughout his career. But when he does play, he is a talented wide receiver. He could kind of slot into that Corey Davis role pretty nicely as a replacement there. The biggest thing is they have A.J. Brown. They don't need a number one wideout. They just need a complimentary wideout at this point. I think that he could be a pretty solid piece for that. Dante Gallo asks, what you think of the Giants going for John Ross? I love that. Low-risk move. They paid 1 year, $2.5 million. I mean, that's a deal that almost every single team in the NFL should have been worth taking a risk with on John Ross. He goes to a situation maybe where he gets an opportunity to stretch the field for them, catch more balls, and really help Daniel Jones develop. I think that's a good pairing for the two sides there. Mikey says, I would love Seattle to look at J.C. Jackson, but it's too much cash for us, and we won't be able to do O-line. Yeah, the cash is really a big question mark there for Seattle. And the other issue, too, is you don't have your first-round pick. Do you really want to go in and spend your second-round pick in free agency as well? Like, yes, he makes you better for sure. J.C. Jackson's better than any player you're going to get in the second round, in my opinion. But GMs really don't love to go into situations where they don't have first or second round picks. That's how you end up like the Houston Texans. They don't have their assets this year. It is a terrible situation. If we were to do a 2-round mock on the Houston Texans on the channel, it would be a 1-second video. I would say, welcome to Utility Sports, and the video would be done because they don't have any assets. Julian Chavez here says, do you think the Watson trade will happen? While we're on the topic of Deshaun Watson, that is a great question. We have a video up on the channel just put out today covering Deshaun Watson. You guys should go check that out after the live stream. Maria Guzman says Pat Mahomes is going to be running for his life. Something he can do, no doubt, but Josh Allen has Stephon Diggs and Emmanuel Sanders. Yeah, Josh Allen, you got to be looking at the Bills, though, too. They've lost some of their tackles. Ty Nsekhe left for Dallas. Brian Dawkins is in free agency as well. The Bills have a little bit of work to do on that offensive line, in my opinion, to protect Josh Allen. He's a little bit bigger, a quarterback, a little bit more physical. He can take a beating better than Patrick Mahomes can. But Mahomes, like you said, can run for his life. He showed that in the Super Bowl. He ran many miles, honestly, running for his life, ran hundreds of yards trying to avoid the pass rush there. Now, it's not a good situation. They went out and got Joe Thuney. They're going to be better in the run game this next year, but they still have to figure out those tackle spots. Look for them to be aggressive in the NFL draft doing that. Monster7649, welcome to the stream. Love having you in here. He says, what do you think Adoree Jackson gets? And I think he's going to get around $10 or $11 million annually, probably on a 2-year type of deal, maybe a 1-year deal, something where it's going to let him get back into free agency, maybe after a better season this year. That's kind of what I expect. Trayvon, what's your thoughts on Adoree Jackson, what he could possibly get?
I'd say probably like a $10 million deal. Again, I think it's probably going to be a prove-it deal. 9 times out of 10, I would just say 1 year. If I was Adoree's team, I wouldn't tell him to sign a long-term thing. I would definitely tell him take the 1 year. Really assess where you want to go. Where do you think a team can maximize your talents and put them on display for next year? Then you're back on the market and you get to retest it as well.
Yeah, most definitely. Benjamin Goldner here asking, what do you think the Browns could do with the teams over the cap? Also, what do you think the Browns will do in the next couple of days free agency-wise? They do have about $15 million in spending power. They already addressed safety in John Johnson. I love that move for them. Look for them to try and figure out their cornerback situation. And this actually leads us into the next comment. Maria Guzman's asking, would you do Gilmore for Odell Beckham Jr.? Cleveland might offer it, but I doubt it. If I'm New England, I'm at least listening as long as I know that I'm getting J.C. Jackson back in the building. If J.C. Jackson's gone, there's no way I'm giving up Stephon Gilmore. You go from the best cornerback room in the NFL to one of the spottiest immediately if you lose both of those guys. Stephon Gilmore, though, if I'm Cleveland, oh my gosh, am I calling New England? And I'm saying, how badly do you want a wide receiver one? Odell Beckham Jr. coming off a torn ACL. If he can get me almost Stephon Gilmore, I'm ecstatic at that point. I think Stephon Gilmore, yes, a little bit older, sure has a big cap number, but Odell Beckham Jr. has a big cap number. I don't think he's even the best long-term fit with the Browns anyway. And at this point, I think the Browns going out, getting a guy like Stephon Gilmore, they would instantly have the best secondary unit with John Johnson there. Grant Delpit, who's coming back from an Achilles injury. You add Stephon Gilmore next to Denzel Ward at your cornerback spots. That is extremely scary. You probably have Greedy Williams play out of the slot. You've got speed. You've got coverage. You've got guys with real ball skills, especially John Johnson now. That is a scary combination if they're able to pull that off. Kayla the Plug says, third day back. Make sure you guys like the video. And do y'all think the Raiders still get Juju? And who should they grab for O-line and defensive back or cornerback help and a backup for Josh Jacobs? I think that he thinks they should get Leonard Fournette. I think Leonard Fournette would be a solid addition for them. I also think a guy like Le'Veon Bell, who's probably a better complement to Josh Jacobs, makes sense. I think that those two guys would be the players to watch for Las Vegas when it comes to the running back department. Thanks again for saying to like the video. Guys, if you haven't right now, go ahead and do that. It means a lot to us here at Utility Sports. And he says, do we think the Raiders should still go after Juju Smith-Schuster, and who should they grab for O-line or defensive back help? I think Richard Sherman should be at the top of their radar when it comes to the defensive back situation, or Desmond King, someone who's versatile, can play the cornerback safety spot, gives them a little bit of flexibility, because then that way on draft night, if a safety falls to you in the second round, you pull the trigger then because you have Desmond King who can play corner. Or if a corner falls to you, you grab the corner because Desmond King can be the safety for you. That type of versatility ahead of the NFL draft could be really good for a team.
Oh, here we go. The Raiders are finalizing a trade of Rodney Hudson to the Cardinals on a swap of draft picks.
Okay, so very, very low-end compensation. The Cardinals, sick and tired of losing their center. They proved me wrong here on the stream today. I thought Rodney Hudson was not going to get traded. He is being Arizona Cardinals. Good move for Arizona. They bring in a guy. They
want to chance him when he hit that market, being outpriced again.
Right, yeah, they did not want to lose out on that. They know how important it is to build up that offensive line. Kenyon Drake on free agency. It'll be interesting to see what the Cardinals do to address the running back situation this offseason. But Rodney Hudson, a good addition from the Las Vegas Raiders for the Arizona Cardinals. Smudger 40K says Cole Sr. from Jacksonville may be a good signing for them. If you're talking about Keelan Cole, I don't know what team he's exactly talking about here. Maybe he's talking about the Tennessee Titans being a landing spot. I know we were talking about the Titans wide receiver spot. Keelan Cole, he's a guy who's had a slower free agency so far. He's had to be patient waiting for a contract, but I think he's an interesting name out there on the market as well. Thank you for that comment, Smudger 40K. Glad having you in here. Craig Smith says Chargers should absolutely go after J.C. Jackson. Well worth the second rounder that they're probably already going to use on a corner. Yeah, Trayvon, that's what you were talking about earlier. And I think J.C. Jackson is well worth a second-round pick. The biggest question for me is what his market looks like in terms of the amount of money he's going to get paid. He will get the bag this offseason. I guarantee that. Burger Does Sports here with a little bit of hope for the Denver Broncos, saying Watson to the Broncos 2021. That would be magnificent if you guys did get Deshaun Watson. He looks really good in a Broncos uniform. I did a video on that today looking at that. And I was like, he looked good there in Denver. That is an interesting situation to monitor. Brandon Production says, sup, welcome to the stream. I know you've been in here all week long. Really love having you in here. Dime says the Cards going to make the playoffs this year 100%. I think that it's very likely, but at the same time, they are in a extremely tough division. The Seattle Seahawks, Los Angeles Rams, San Francisco 49ers, and Arizona Cardinals all probably look at themselves in the mirror and say, hey, we're playoff teams. And sure, with the 7 playoff teams, all 3 of those teams could make the playoffs in addition to the division winner. But that would be very, very crazy if all 4 teams in one division did make the playoffs. Trayvon, what do you think about that division? Who's winning that division and who is unfortunately going to sit in the cell there?
That division is absolutely wild. Like when you really think about it again, like the Niners aren't going to be picking 12 again. I can almost guarantee that. They're going to be in the upper echelon of 20 and above. It's really going to be pretty interesting to see. So we have the draft compensation. So Rodney Hudson and the 7th round pick to Arizona for their 3rd round pick. So
not only did they get a trade, they got great compensation on a guy they were going to release. Now Rodney Hudson is a very good center, But the reason I'm surprised is because they had shown their hand saying they were going to release him. Usually when something like this happens, it's a conditional pick that gets traded, or a 6th swap for a 7th, not something as high as a 3rd round pick. That is much better compensation for the Las Vegas Raiders than I was expecting. And that puts them back into the realm of getting a center back in the draft, a younger one, possibly a guy like Trey Smith from Tennessee. We'll see which way.
Another re-signing here, well, a tender. The Bills, are gonna giving Ike Bolliger the right to refusal first refusal tender. He started 7 games for Buffalo last year.
Okay, so the right to refusal there, first refusal, they can basically match the first contract that he agrees to, essentially, if they do decide that they want to do that. Burger Does Sports says he's too good. His value is going to be high no matter what they are competing with, at least 6 teams. I'm not exactly sure.
I think he's talking about Deshaun.
Oh, yeah, okay, yep. Yeah, I do completely agree. It's going to be a tough situation for a team. I mean, that's why you're looking at 3 or 4 first-round picks. But the thing is, we've seen multiple franchises in recent years go through 3, 4 first-round picks trying to find that franchise quarterback. Deshaun Watson is that that is the situation. Raiders Crack says, when do you think Juju will sign? That's a great question. We've been waiting on these wide receivers. I don't know if I'm confident to say it's even today yet. I think that I wouldn't be surprised if he does. Also, it sounds like the Raiders are listening to offers on Gabe Jackson, who they had reportedly cut. Hadn't been official yet. He has not been out on free agency. Instead, they still technically own his rights, and now they are shopping him as well, looking for some compensation for him. He would be an interesting guard on the market. Look for the New York Jets to maybe get involved there. He is a very quality guard that could come in and be a starting level player for a wide variety of teams. Seattle Seahawks, that would make some sense as well if the compensation can be figured out between those 2 teams, because Mikey is saying Seattle can't win that division without an O-line. Yes, you need an O-line, especially now the Cardinals getting 2 elite edges into their system. Chandler Jones coming back from injury, also introducing J.J. Watt. They're much better on the defensive line. That division, incredibly strong on the defensive line. The San Francisco 49ers, you know how good their front 7 is. Also, the Los Angeles Rams, Aaron Donald, Leonard Floyd, do I need to say more there about that team? Seattle, not only are they in a tough division, they're in a tough division for what that offensive line really is.
Also, the Raiders are going to be bringing back Richie Incognito on a new deal.
They are. Okay, that's funny because yesterday I had talked about how I could see them renegotiating with Richie Incognito and coming to a new agreement. That is what we are now seeing today. There was a prediction on Utility Sports. Maria Guzman says, how likely do Browns move up to get Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, say swap 26 and a second rounder, and how high do they trade up? Owusu-Koramoah is the perfect fit for the Cleveland Browns. I love what Owusu-Koramoah can bring to the NFL. I think it's very possible that he could be a top 10 player in this class and even the best linebacker over Micah Parsons. I think those 2 are definitely 1 and 2. At this point, I have a slight edge to Micah Parsons, but I wouldn't be surprised if Owusu-Koramoah does end up having a better career. And I think if they did say swap their 26 and a second rounder, they could probably move up to as high as 16, maybe 15. You're looking at the Cardinals maybe being willing to pick up an extra asset to build up some of their offensive line or defense with later round picks. And also maybe New England looking to move down, save some money with their first round draft pick, the amount of money they cost there to sign at the slot that they draft them at. I think that those 2 teams would be situational places where the Browns could try and move up using those 2 assets. Thank you for the question there. Karthik Basani asked, Deshaun Watson, San Francisco. That's a great question. We have a video up on the channel talking about Deshaun Watson. You guys should definitely go check it out after the live stream today. But Deshaun Watson is a great fit in San Francisco. He would blend perfectly into that Shanahan offense there, and he would be a magnificent upgrade over Jimmy Garoppolo. Question is, do I see the 49ers being willing to go out 4 first rounds from now and give up that many assets? Maybe not. It also takes 2 to tango. We have to see Houston be willing to work on a trade with a team. Hot Sauce Junkie Tim says, being a Cardinals fan, will Arizona address the running back position, or is Chase Edmonds going to be the bell cow? I'm very confident that Chase Edmonds will not be the bell cow. Is it possible he could be your lead running back in week 1? Yes, but not necessarily a bell cow. I think that in the NFL draft, you guys are going to address it one way or another. Najee Harris would be an extremely interesting pick to me. He is the best running back in this class. I also think Travis Etienne would be a great fit. But if you guys don't go with a running back early in round 2 or late round 1, maybe it could be a guy like Kenneth Gainwell out of the University of Memphis. He would be a magnificent fit. Trayvon, do you have something to add here?
You got Dono.
Okay, we got a Dono. We will hit that in just a minute here. Everybody hates Chris says Robert Tonyan is a second-round tender. Do you think a team would spend that? Unfortunately, I don't think a team would spend that just because he's a tight end. Now, Robert Tonyan really proved himself to be a very good tight end this year, caught a ton of touchdowns, proved himself to be one of the best red zone threats in the NFL, a physical tight end, someone who can block, also a quality receiver. I just think that is the perfect point for the Packers to say, okay, we know a team's not going to sign you to that. We kind of get negotiating rights with you now. Just work with us. Let's figure something out here. Jethro Schmidt wants to know, where could David Andrews go? We had thought the Cardinals would maybe be a fit, but they just found their center of the future, Rodney Hudson. So now David Andrews' market maybe slims down a little bit. Maybe Vegas, with their money, they feel like they want to upgrade at center, go with David Andrews. Not that that's the best move for them, but getting some compensation for Rodney Hudson, coming back and signing David Andrews would be interesting. Put him next to Richie Incognito and Colton Miller on that offensive line. Also, the Miami Dolphins, they were the first team I thought of this morning when I saw the news of Ted Karras going back to New England. Now Miami left in a situation where they need to address center. They have a lot of money left, just about $30 million. David Andrews could slot pretty nicely into that, and they could still look to improve other areas of their football team, even after signing David Andrews. Benjamin Goldner wants to know, what are good cornerback targets for the Browns? If they're looking for a one-year bridge cornerback, someone could be like Pat Pete, maybe Richard Sherman. I think Patrick Peterson would be the better fit next to Denzel Ward in terms of what they like to do on that defense, with Kevin Stefanski being their head coach there. Trayvon, do we have some news here?
Denzel Perryman is going to sign with the Panthers.
Okay, we have a linebacker off the board just a few minutes after Jayon Brown comes off the board. We have another linebacker, Denzel Perryman from the Chargers, goes over to Carolina. I had talked yesterday about how badly the Carolina Panthers needed to address linebacker. They have a serious need for that position. They are addressing that with Denzel Perryman. I still think they have some work to do on that defense. Cornerback, probably a little bit more linebacker help, but Shaq Thompson gets a running mate in Denzel Perryman. Yes, Trayvon, what else do we have?
That's it, but also it's 4:00 now, and that means that the league year has officially begun. This is when now free agents can actually sign their contracts, and as well as all the fifth-year options become fully guaranteed right now.
Yes, that fax machine there in Roger Goodell's offense is getting put to work at the moment. Every single trade that's been agreed upon at this point, for example, Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff deal, the Carson Wentz trade to Indianapolis, those are all now being finalized officially. You will see now that Carson Wentz is officially an Indianapolis Colt, and so on and so forth with all of these guys that have agreed to deals. The moratorium period is over. They are actually signing contracts. Thank you for pointing that out, Trayvon. I do really appreciate that. Raiders Crack says, bro, this whole releasing the Raiders offensive line is weird unless they have something planned to make a huge splash. Yeah, I've been very unsure about it. Now they got Rodney Hudson out the door, but they got a pretty good asset for him. We'll see what John Gruden and Mike Mayock plan on doing with some of their newfound cap space, what they're going to do with some of the moves that they are making at this point moving forward. KO the Plug says he goes to the school that Najee went to. So proud of him. That is awesome. That's really good to hear. It's pretty cool having a personal story like that can relate you to a player. And Najee Harris is a pretty good player to want to relate to. It's Rodney says Najee Harris would be a perfect to pair with Chase Edmonds. I completely agree. Najee Harris, best running back in this class. Would love for the Cardinals to grab him on draft night. Trayvon, what do we got?
It's going to be a 2-year deal for Denzel Perryman.
Okay, do we have any money yet on that, or is it just the term?
No money, just a link.
Interesting. Okay, Aaron B., we're finally getting to your donation. Is the Rodney Hudson to Arizona report real? Yes, it is. They are trading Rodney Hudson to the Arizona Cardinals along with a 7th-round pick for a 3rd-round pick this year. That is a very good deal for both sides. Rodney Hudson, one of the better centers in the NFL, goes to Arizona, really bolsters that offensive line. We see Arizona focusing the trenches this offseason. First, J.J. Watt, now Rodney Hudson. They have improved mightily on both sides of the football in the trenches, and now also the Las Vegas Raiders getting assets for a guy they had planned on cutting. That is a pretty good situation for both sides. Anton Montez, welcome to the stream. First time I've seen your name in here, so welcome very much. We really appreciate you guys all stopping in. Hit that like button and hit that subscribe button if you are new to Utility Sports. He says, who are some players do you think the Packers should target? And that's a great question. I think Will Fuller would be the dream fit for the Green Bay Packers. However, they're a little bit tight on the salary cap situation. I also think that a guy like Patrick Peterson would be a good grab, or possibly a guy like Desmond King, but they're going to have some work to do. They just got done working out a Darius Smith today to open up the money to sign Aaron Jones. They still need more work to do to open up cap space. They are just not in the best situation. They're about at negative $2 million. So right now it's kind of hard to see them making any moves until they restructure a few other contracts or try to open up some money, maybe a release, something that we could see happen there in Green Bay. But thank you for the question. That was a very good question. Braden McCarthy wants to know if we could get a rare three-way trade between the New England Patriots, Houston Texans, and the San Francisco 49ers. I'm sure there with that you are thinking that Houston sends Deshaun Watson to San Francisco. San Francisco sends Jimmy Garoppolo to New England. New England sends a little bit of a low-end asset to Houston there. The 49ers load up assets to the Houston Texans for Deshaun Watson. I think that it would be actually possible. This is one of those rare situations where it does make sense for the Patriots to try and jump in on a deal like that. We know how much Bill Belichick loved Jimmy Garoppolo. He actually wanted Jimmy Garoppolo over Tom Brady down the back end of their stay together. Was that the right decision? No, obviously not. But that is what he had wanted at one point, according to reports at least. And Jimmy Garoppolo, a reunion with New England does make a lot of sense. Jacoby Brissett went to Miami. I thought he would be a possible return to New England. That didn't end up happening. But Jimmy Garoppolo back to New England would make sense. Trayvon, would you like this three-way deal? And what team besides the Texans would lose that trade? Obviously, the Texans are going to lose any trade where Deshaun Watson's going out the door more than likely.
I mean, that would be insane. I'm not sure if we've ever seen a three-team trade in the NFL before, but that would be absolutely crazy. You know, getting Jimmy G back to the Pats would be good as well because, I mean, Bill Belichick liked him a lot more than he apparently liked Tom Brady. At one point, he was ready to move off of Brady and keep Jimmy G, but Tom Brady forced his hand, and the Texans would obviously be losing Deshaun. But, obviously it's going to be an L. But if you think about the amount of draft compensation that they might be able to get from this type of trade, it would be crazy because I think the Patriots, have a boatload of picks in this draft and as well as the next one, I'm pretty sure. So they'll be getting something. They'll be getting a lot of draft compensation back, but then you have to hit on them, so it doesn't really matter as well. But,
yeah, so far with what we're seeing from Nick Caserio this offseason, I'm not sure if there's going to be doing a lot of hitting on anything there in Houston for the next year or two.
The Vikings have agreed to terms with Rashawn Hill, Dalvin Tomlinson, and Nick Vigil.
Okay, so those deals are coming through officially now. Those are ones that we had.
Oh, okay, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, but now that's what we were exactly talking about just 5 minutes ago. Those deals are officially being finalized. Dimes wants to know David Andrews to the Packers. You know, they do have a serious need at center after losing Corey Linsley, and I think he would be a player they are interested in. He is a great answer at that center spot. Will they have the money to make a deal there? I'm not sure yet at this point if they're going to be able to open that up. That will be worth monitoring, though. Thank you for bringing that up here in the chat. Maria Guzman, who's been asking great questions all day, wants to know, could you see a talent like Gregory Rousseau being worth waiting at pick number 26 for the Browns? And would he be able to start day one? Is Jalen Phillips really better than him? I know a lot of NFL draft experts are saying that Jalen Phillips is the better edge. I think he's more NFL ready for sure. I think he's more impactful in the run game. I think he's a little bit further along in his development when it comes to pass rush moves. He really solidified himself this past year at Miami. But Gregory Rousseau, remember, he's an opt-out. We haven't seen him for a year. It's very possible that he could have developed quite a bit over the past year, especially if he's really focusing on his training. There's also some risk there. We haven't seen him in a year. You know, there's a risk that maybe he hasn't worked on anything. Maybe he's even regressed a little bit without playing real organized football. There's always that concern. That'll be interesting to monitor in the draft how this happens. In a few of our other mock drafts on the channel, I have said that Gregory Rousseau would be a great pick for the Cleveland Browns. I really do believe in his potential. He's got a phenomenal frame, good athleticism, good strength, good power. He's going to be able to push offensive linemen in the NFL on day one. My concern is the pass rush moves. He doesn't really have a good collection of those yet, but I think at pick 26, putting him across from Myles Garrett, that is not the wrong answer, in my opinion. Dimes here talks about Perriman signing with the Panthers. Thank you for bringing that up. Realist says third-round pick. Well, that was a good deal. Yes, it was for the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm very surprised that they got that kind of asset back on him. The confidence here says, let's go. The Pats Madden Ultimate Team is official. That is very funny. We'll see how this goes. One thing I wanted to bring up, last couple of days, I've been saying how you don't win a Super Bowl in free agency. You don't win a Super Bowl during the offseason. You don't win a Super Bowl in the month of March or April. And that's really true. The team that spent most money the last decade in free agency has been the Jacksonville Jaguars. They have spent north of $1.2 billion with B dollars in free agency. And during those 10 years, they've lost nearly 75% of their games. You guys, I know you. It's very easy to believe that adding talent like Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, and all that is going to lead to wins. It doesn't always in the NFL. Yes, I think some of their moves were really good decisions, but at the end of the day, I still don't think that the Patriots are in the driver's seat in that division. I don't think that they should be looked at as a team even close to the driver's seat in the AFC. They still have a lot of work to do. I don't think Cam Newton's necessarily the best option at quarterback, although I think he's a solid one for short-term deals. That's just going to be my thoughts on it. I'd love to know what you guys think about Cam Newton and the New England Patriots, really which way that they're going to be trending. Do you think that they are for sure a playoff team? Let me know in the chat right now. Trayvon, if you had to guess, New England Patriots, playoff team, not playoff team, in a 7-team playoff out in the AFC, what do you say?
I think that they're trending in the right direction, at least. Yeah. Like I said before, a lot of people think that they shouldn't bring back, they should not brought back Cam. That was a bad move, but they brought back Cam on a really cheap deal. So they can still get another quarterback again, whether that's in the draft, drafting a guy like Mac Jones. Even if they want to move up, I guess, they could get like a Trey Lance or something. It's still possible for them to adjust the quarterback situation. I definitely don't think that it is it's bad in any way, shape, or form. I don't know if I per se see them making the playoffs. Like I don't want to be confident enough to say that right away, but they're trending in the right direction. And when you have Bill Belichick, you have automatically a chance to have a positive record. So that in itself is halfway to a playoff berth.
Yeah, most definitely. They are a team that I'm kind of on the fence about as well. I wouldn't be surprised if they are. Wouldn't be surprised if they aren't. There's still a lot of the offseason to go yet. What they do in the NFL draft will ultimately impact how good this roster is moving into next season as well. KO the plug.
Do you know who Chad BB?
Yeah, Chad Beebe. He's coming back to the Vikings on a 1-year deal, right?
Correct. Yeah.
He is a low-end wide receiver, special teamer. There's some solid potential with him. I think he's an okay route runner. He's a little overhyped in Minnesota. I'm not going to lie to you, but I think that Vikings fans will be happy to have him back. And it's a pretty low risk move for Minnesota. I think that's a no-brainer for both sides. The plug here says, surprise Trayvon ain't chewing on his hoodie today. That is a very funny comment. He's a little bit less nervous about it today in free agency, day 3, a little bit slower vibes. And there he goes. Jermaine says, thoughts on the Falcons and what they need to do this offseason. Falcons, one of the most interesting situations in the NFL. They kind of lucked into pick 4, to be honest. And I don't even know if lucked is the right word. I mean, they blew a ton of games down the stretch of the fourth quarter this year that they just shouldn't have, really lost with what the score was with about, 3, 4, 5 minutes left in the game. They deserve to get the 4th pick with the games that they lost, but at the same time, it's kind of a rare situation for them. I think this year, the Falcons, they need to add a pass rusher. They've been struggling to do that for about the last half decade or so now. They've got a new GM. They got a new head coach there in Arthur Smith. Look for them to address halfback too. Todd Gurley, a guy who's still out in free agency. We haven't heard really any rumblings about him at all either. It'll be interesting to see where he ends up. I think a return to Atlanta does make a little bit of sense at least. For the Falcons, I think that they should look to address their secondary a little bit through free agency. They're going to lose Keanu Neal. I think that they could use a cornerback. They're very young out of that cornerback position. Also, they could use an edge, but I just don't really see a way that they address that in free agency. It's going to be about the draft for them. I think dream scenario is trading down from pick 4, getting a very good haul for pick 4, trying to build up the team through a multitude of draft picks. But at this point, I'm a little shaky. I ultimately think the Falcons will go with a quarterback at pick 4 and then try and fill out some of their other needs on this team, such as edge. They'll go with an edge in round 2. I wouldn't be surprised if Azeez Ojulari, the Georgia edge, stays in the state of Georgia with the Atlanta Falcons, for example. Flashy YT wants to know what we think about Rodney Hudson. Surprising deal. I did not think that they were going to get a third-round pick for him. They did, though, and that's an interesting move. Rodney Hudson does make the Cardinals a lot better, though. I like that move for both sides, despite them giving up a very good asset. Trayvon, anything to add to that or any other news?
Marlon Mack is going to be re-signing with the Colts.
Okay, so something I thought would for sure not happen. Marlon Mack goes back to Indianapolis. I don't really understand why. Jonathan Taylor showed himself to be the future. Nyheim Hines showed himself to be that great compliment back. I'm very surprised that Marlon Mack is back with the Indianapolis Colts. That is not something I would have predicted. Y4 Steve also talking about Gabe Jackson on the trading block now. That is something we did just talk about a little bit earlier. And Gabe Jackson, we'll see if they do get an asset for him. If they do, I would expect a lower end pick, something like a 6th or a 7th. But who knows? I thought Rodney Hudson wasn't going to get moved for a lot. He got moved for a 3rd round pick. I guess we'll see what really does happen moving forward. Mikey says wild card maybe for the New England Patriots. I guess that is a pretty understandable thing. I think that's kind of where we're seeing them. I would be very surprised if they won the division. Gethro Schmidt says, could Julio Jones, Matt Ryan get traded this offseason? Falcons go into full rebuild. I just don't think that's happening. I think Matt Ryan and Julio Jones are there to stay in Atlanta, at least through this season. Next offseason is when I could see the Atlanta Falcons really transitioning from those two guys at this point. Incognito re-signed with the Raiders. There is hope with this O-line yet. Yes, realist, there is. John Gruden, Mike Mayock, bring back Richie Incognito on a much better number, I'm assuming, for the Raiders cap hit situation. And I do like that situation quite a bit now for the Raiders. Hot Sauce Junkie Tim says, has anyone heard any news on Larry Fitzgerald? No, not quite yet. But I wouldn't be surprised if a retirement is in the cards for him, especially with AJ Green going to Arizona. Trayvon, what do you think?
They said that they were just giving him time to think. Like, obviously, it's either I don't see him going anywhere else. He's going to stay a Cardinal, or it's pretty much like if you want to retire, sure. If you want to run it back, sure as well. If I had to guess, I think he's going to run it back one more year, given the fact of how much they've acquired and how much talent that they've got, and just give him one more chance. Like again, I think maybe signing JJ, getting Rodney Harris. And now AJ Green, maybe now that makes you like say, okay, maybe this is that year. So I'm in again.
Right, and they would have a lot less to expect from Larry Fitzgerald this year. Now having 3 receivers probably on the depth chart above him. Larry Fitzgerald probably between retirement and staying in Arizona. But if he did leave, there's only one team I think that would be in the running. That would be the Minnesota Vikings. He is from Minnesota originally. Might want to play in front of his hometown. That will be interesting to see. Kyron here is saying, I wonder if corner is a bigger need for the run or bigger need than running back for the Bills after the Patriots moves to improve their offense. Trayvon, do you think that the Bills need to address running back or cornerback more there in Buffalo?
I think quarterback is a much bigger need personally, because given the fact that they drafted Zach Moss last year and they still have Devin Singletary, they need another corner opposite of Tre'Davious White. Tre'Davious White, one of the best cornerbacks in the league, So I definitely think that they need to get another guy opposite of him, but I would think that cornerback is more of a bigger need, considering the fact that you have two capable backs already. Even if they split time, I would be if it was my team, I wouldn't feel as terrified having those two in my backfield to start the season.
Expect the Buffalo Bills to address both this offseason as well via the NFL draft. I think pick 30 ends up being a cornerback, whether that is Asante Samuel Jr. or Eric Stokes. Those are the two lead candidates I could see being Buffalo Bills at pick 30 in the NFL draft. And then also round 2 or round 3 coming back with a running back, someone who is a legit pass catcher. I think if they maybe moved up for Travis Etienne in round 2, that could make some sense, or possibly stay put. Grab a guy like Kenneth Gainwell in round 3. I think that would be an interesting situation. I think that those two guys fit a little bit better in Brian Dable's offense. Brandon Kesey says, sorry, guys, wife called. Did I miss anything? Rodney Hudson got traded. I don't know how long you've been talking to the wife, but Rodney Hudson did get traded to the Arizona Cardinals. They found their starting center. Raiders offensive lineman Gabe Jackson is also now on the trade block, despite rumors he was going to be released. Richie Incognito has now re-signed with the Las Vegas Raiders. All the recent news has been surrounding the Las Vegas Raiders offensive line. Raiders got a 3rd-round pick for Rodney Hudson. Gabe Jackson now on the trade block. Richie Incognito back in Las Vegas. And Brandon, that's a good thing that you answered that wife's call. Happy wife, happy life. Maria Guzman here says, are you familiar with U.S. safety Talanoa Hufanga? Why does Lindy Sports Magazine have him going number 59 to the Cleveland Browns with a 4th-round grade? Wouldn't that be a reach? To be honest, I am not super familiar with that player. I'm going to have to turn on the tape before I speak about that player too much. It might not be a reach if he is well worth that. We'll see, though. Trayvon, what do we got?
Marquise Goodwin is going to be released by the 49ers. So
okay,
speedy weather in the market.
One day after him returning, he is now released. That is kind of mind-boggling to me.
Returning? What do you mean?
Like they re-signed him yesterday.
Did they? Marquise?
Yeah, on a 1-year deal. Marquise Goodwin went back to San Francisco, and then they just released him again now. I know this is 2 years in a row. This is 2 years in a row now.
Yeah, I'm looking at Twitter. Everybody's like LMFAO. I'm like, what?
Yeah, this is 2 years in a row now.
He said, didn't they get him like 2 seconds ago?
Yeah, like his new stint in San Francisco lasted as long as Jonnu Smith being a number 1 tight end for the New England Patriots. That is about 1 day before Hunter Henry came in to take that. Lovely KMG is asking, what is the next Los Angeles Chargers move? Trayvon, what do you think could be their next move, or what would you want their next move to be?
I think their next move is getting another cornerback. I think that they really, truly, wholeheartedly need to look in the direction of J.C. Jackson. The fact that you can get him for a 2nd round, considering the fact that you probably were already going to use that pick on a cornerback as well, you'd be able to get an established cornerback and really somebody that fits Brandon Staley's defense to a T. You allow him to shut down the opposing team's number 1 wide receiver, and which allows everybody else to just do their thing. And I think that JC and Michael Davis are 2 cornerbacks, and having Chris Harris in the slot would be phenomenal. Then your only need would be safety at that point, considering Nazir Adderley hasn't been what you had expected him to be. But I would look for, I think that more than likely it's probably a cornerback such as Troy Hill. I said that yesterday. I'm going to say that today, given the fact that he already knows the scheme, and he shouldn't command too much money.
Right. He's one of those cheaper options there who also has that connection with Brandon Staley like you're talking about. Charmander 6000 wants to know if there's any Browns news. Nothing breaking today, but with the start of the league year, there is an important thing to note with the Cleveland Browns. David Njoku still on the roster. His $6+ million did just become fully guaranteed about 22 minutes ago when the new league year started. That is a big deal, because that means in trade negotiations, they will take in a little bit of dead cap. He did not get released, and he is due $6 million this year. That is an important thing to note with the Cleveland Browns. Remember, that's why the Tennessee Titans decided to move on from Adoree Jackson. They didn't want his $10+ million to become fully guaranteed at that point. They released him. The Browns decide to not make the same move with Njoku. They're holding on to him right now, probably looking to trade him for the Jacksonville Jaguars to be in on David Njoku. Do we have news, Trayvon?
No, I was listening. You said there was something on Javen and Njoku. That's why I was listening.
Oh, yeah. I think it's very possible that he could be a Jacksonville Jaguar by the end of the free agency period. Monster7649 says, is Kyle Long a good fit for the Raiders at right guard? How much do you think he gets? Thanks, guys. Hey, thank you, Monster. You've been absolutely killing it with these questions, asking phenomenal questions, and we really love the support that you've shown us by sticking around in all these streams. Kyle Long is a great fit for the Raiders at right guard. I think he probably gets north of $8-9 million. Now, the interesting thing is he's playing at guard. That position tends to get a little undervalued when it comes to free agency. I was surprised when Joe Thuney got $16 million playing at guard. So I think $8-9 million is around kind of his value, especially since he's coming off a year of retirement. I don't really know what he looks like, to be honest. I haven't seen any of his workouts. I haven't gotten to see him play football in over a year now at this point. But Kyle Long, I think he would be a good addition to Las Vegas, and I think that's really the most likely situation, especially since Kansas City has already added a guard in free agency. I know those were two of his meeting points. Alex Silva, thoughts on the Chargers not restructuring Mike Williams' contract, $15 million guaranteed. Trayvon, what's your thoughts on Mike Williams and his long-term future in Los Angeles?
I think that I don't like that money personally, given the fact of his injury history and the fact that he's literally Keenan Allen is only making $20,000 more than him this season, and I think that's crazy. That's insane. I would much rather personally give that to somebody like Juju, who as at least has the best availability is availability, and I think that Juju has shown that he can be available for sure, and he's done that much better than Mike Williams. But it's already here. It sucks that it's a thing personally, but I mean we could still look to maybe a trade for Orlando Brown involving Mike Williams to the Ravens. Maybe that there's still hope, but I think that he's already gonna be a Charger. He's pretty much locked in, but it's one more year, and I guess we'll see how this year goes.
The one thing I'm gonna say on Mike Williams is the Chargers probably did approach him about restructuring that contract, but at the same point, there's no reason for Mike Williams to agree to restructure.
They couldn't restructure because it's a 5th-year option. So it was either just like trade him or an extension that would lower the thing.
Okay, right. And Mike Williams isn't going to pass on $15 million. That's ultimately my biggest point. Is he's going to take that $15 million wholeheartedly.
Knowing that he's been injured and anything is possible. Like I said, athletes' moneymaker is their body. So
right.
You get the bag while you can, and I don't blame him. I would do the same thing.
Yep, same here. Monster also asked, how much do you think Malik Hooker gets? I think he's going to take a 1-year deal, probably somewhere between $5 to $7 million. Try and hit the market again next year, but I wouldn't even be surprised with how slow some of the free agency has been this offseason with the reduced cap hit number, that maybe he takes something as low as $4 million. It would be very good value. I think a lot of teams should be interested in Malik Hooker, but my ultimate estimation is somewhere between 5 and 7 for him. Maria Guzman says, I lost that comment. But Sid and C here talking about the Seahawks say we have to get Gabe Jackson or David Andrews. Yes, I definitely understand your desire to improve that offensive line. It's just going to be tough. Seattle doesn't have a ton of money available. In fact, at this point, let me see what the Seahawks have in terms of cap space, and they have about $13 million, which, maybe you can go out, maybe you can sign 2 offensive linemen, but you still have to have money open to filling out the entire roster. You need 53 players on an NFL roster. It's not like you can just commit the rest of your money to 2 guys. They're in danger of not really being able to fill out the entire roster if they do commit money just to 2 guys here. Jonathan Harms wants to know if there's any news on the Chiefs upgrading their offensive line after missing out on Trent Williams. Nothing quite yet. I wouldn't be surprised if a Mitchell Schwartz reunion does happen. I know they did cut him, but I think he could come back on a lower cap number for them. That does make some sense at this point. Maybe Eric Fisher as well. But however, his situation is a little bit more complicated because he's seriously injured, got injured in the playoffs there against, I believe it was the Buffalo Bills when he did get injured in that AFC Conference Championship game. So that is a little bit tougher of a situation. Maybe Riley Reif comes in. There's a few other tackles, but ultimately for them, they're going to be looking for franchise tackles in the NFL draft. Look for them to maybe address it round 1 with pick 31, and then also coming back in a later round, trying to find another guy who can fit at the tackle spot. Joe Thuney, however, a very good situational signing for them. They paid him a lot of money to play guard, but he was one of the best free agents available in the class. I also think that they're going to figure out a deal with Austin Reiter, the center there that Patrick Mahomes is used to working with. Juice World Fanboy, one of our great subscribers here, says Odell Beckham Jr. should go to the Raiders. Yeah, that would be an interesting fit for sure. They're definitely in the market for a wide receiver still at this point. Cleveland, I could very much see them moving on from Odell Beckham. Trayvon, what do you think about Odell to the Raiders?
I think that they need another wide receiver. You know what I mean? Again, they don't have a true number one. John Brown is not a number one wide receiver. He's probably like a number 3 at best, I'd personally say. But like maybe OBJ is the way. I'm not sure what his cap hit is, so that's obviously a thing, and that's obviously super duper important. But I guess that remains to be seen. I think they'll just address the wide receiver position in the draft again.
Yeah, most definitely. The draft is one of the best spots to get wide receivers. You can find talented ones on days 1, 2, and 3 if you find the right guys that fit into what you're trying to do through the air. Burger Does Sports says, I know you probably already talked about this, but Incognito is back on the Raiders. Yes, he is. He's coming back on what I presume to be a lower cap number for them, kind of help them open up some cap space, and he returns to Las Vegas. Now we're getting a little bit better of a picture of the Raiders' offensive line situation. Andre James at center. He could be their starter next season. That's yet to be seen, though. Richie Incognito back at left guard. Now they need to look for one more tackle to replace Trent Brown and one more guard, and we're kind of getting that offensive line picture filled in quite a bit. Maria Guzman, yeah, Odell to Las Vegas Raiders for the 17th pick. Yeah, Odell's not going to get a first-round pick anymore. Trayvon, what do you got for me?
I am probably going to have to head out now. I have to go coach. But it was nice obviously being on the stream again. Thank you for having me. And I'll definitely be seeing you guys much later. Are you streaming later or no?
I'm not sure quite yet. We will let you know, though, before we do. Thank you, guys. Everyone, leave an applause here for our special guest, Trayvon Chris Robertson. Thank you for being on the stream today, Trey. It was a lot of fun having you on. Once again, thanks for stopping in, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Patriots fan here asked any Patriots news, and at this point, not a lot going on with the New England Patriots. They've been a little bit quieter since day 1 and day 2. They don't have a ton of cap space yet. Biggest thing, they put a second-round tender on J.C. Jackson, their star cornerback, their very young cornerback as well. That is kind of surprising to me because I thought he was for sure going to get a first-round tender. Now I think it's very possible that they could lose J.C. Jackson in free agency by only placing that second-round tender. They would get a second-round pick back in return for J.C. Jackson, but it'll be interesting to see what they do with their cornerback situation. There's also rumors that Stephon Gilmore could be out of New England. That is something definitely worth monitoring as we move forward. The On to Cincinnati podcast responds to our Vega here. I think you definitely take Pitts if he's there, talking about the Los Angeles Chargers, but I doubt he's there at pick 13. I'd personally try to bolster the offensive line even more. Maybe Darisaw or Rashawn Slater if he's there. I definitely agree. If Pitts is there at 13 for the Los Angeles Chargers, he is a must grab. I would even suggest maybe the Chargers look to move up. If Kyle Pitts is still on the board around pick 9, pick 10, try and jump in front of the New York Giants. Make sure you can get that superstar playmaker if he falls a little bit. But Rashawn Slater would be a very great fallback option. He's the best pass blocker in the NFL draft, according to draft expert Austin Host here at Utility Sports. He dives super deep in on the offensive line. He knows everything about these prospects, fills me in on a lot of it. I also watch these guys quite a bit my own. Christian Darisaw, another solid option there out of Virginia Tech. The Hokie left tackle could be a nice addition as well. Maria Guzman here says, okay, Browns give Philadelphia picks 26, 59, and Odell for the number 6 pick. Would Cleveland benefit from say getting Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, or Jalen Waddle instead? I think yes, for sure. They would benefit, but that's not going to happen. Philadelphia is not going to take pick 26, 59, and Odell for pick 6. That pick's a little bit more valuable in terms of what they're going to want. They would probably want pick 26, Odell, and another first at least to move up all the way to number 6. But thank you for putting your comment in here. Colin Lingham's asking about the Baltimore Ravens here, says, should the Ravens pick up edge rusher first or wide receiver first, in your opinion? And like and subscribe. This is a great live stream. Thank you, Colin, for those kind words. Yes, everyone in here, if you are not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. You guys have been going crazy with the support over the last few days. We really appreciate it here. You guys are absolutely awesome. And in terms of what they should look at first, if you're talking about the NFL draft, it depends on what wide receivers are there. If Kadarius Toney's there, I think they should really consider that. If Rashad Bateman is there, that is the immediate yes. Draft Rashad Bateman. He is an elite wide receiver, 6'2". He presents himself as a good frame, creates great separation off the line of scrimmage, has great footwork, very, very good wide receiver at creating separation, can work across the middle of the field, good after the catch as well. And of course, just ran a 4.39 40-yard dash time. People had questions about his athleticism, his end-to-end speed. I was trying to tell people you don't have to worry about that with how well he creates separation at the line of scrimmage, but he even shut those guys up by running a very, very good 40 time. He would be an excellent option for the Ravens in the first round of the NFL draft. Kenneth Brooks asks, are Washington football team still looking for a... He doesn't answer that, but I'll tell you what they're looking for right now at this point. They're looking for a safety. They're probably looking for a second corner in addition to William Jackson. And I think that they could be looking for a wide receiver yet at this point. They still need to tackle, but I just don't think that comes through free agency. I expect the Washington football team to draft a tackle in the first round this year. Anthony Brown wants to know, please tell me, did the Jets do something yet today? Again, they have been quiet. They made a couple moves yesterday, brought in Justin Hardy, a special teamer, one of the best special teamers in the NFL. I think he was a good acquisition. They've also, so far in free agency, brought in wide receiver Corey Davis, edge Carl Lawson. I'm sure you know about those moves by now, but the Jets have been a little quiet. They're sitting on about $50 million of cap space, and it's okay that they're being quiet. There's still a lot of talent out there in free agency. That's why you guys need to be subscribed so you don't miss out on any of these big-time moves that happen through the NFL. Brandon Kesey says, can't wait to see that teal number 16. Any news on Alex Smith? He's talking about Trevor Lawrence. For those of you who don't know, the Jaguars did just recently change their colors to teal as the primary, and Trevor Lawrence will look really good in a Jacksonville Jaguars uniform. Any news on Alex Smith? Not quite yet. They're going to take it a little bit slower. Their camp is going to be patient this offseason, looking for the right situation for him where he can maybe transition to that mentor role, or if he still wants to be a starter in the NFL, maybe find a spot where that is going to happen. We'll see really what does happen here. Mikey says, take it easy, man. Thanks for your time, dude. Hey, we love having you guys in here. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to sit with us and ask us some great questions. You guys have absolutely been killing it lately. We really appreciate that. Hector Lopez, welcome to the stream. First time seeing your name today. Glad to have you back in here. I know you've been in on some of the other ones. Let's see here what else is going on. Oh, Kenneth Brooks, it was asking about a quarterback. And I don't think at this point that they're looking for a quarterback. I think Mac Jones is still in the running as a possibility if he falls to pick 19. But Washington's going to opt probably for a tackle in the NFL draft. Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to be a true bridge quarterback for them, and then look for them in the 2022 NFL draft to try and pull a trigger on a quarterback there, whoever plays themselves into first-round picks at that point. Anton Montez asks, what teams do you think could be in for a Zach Ertz trade? That is a phenomenal question, and there are two, maybe three teams that I think should be considered the lead candidates at this point for a trade for Zach Ertz. One of them being the New York Jets. They are in desperate need of a tight end, and I think that low-end assets could be what all it takes to get Zach Ertz at this point. Philadelphia clearly going to move on from him. It's not going to take a ton of draft assets to pull in a guy like Zach Ertz, who is still a top 10 tight end in the NFL for sure, possibly a top 5 tight end at this point. That's kind of my thoughts on him. Jacksonville, they really badly need to address their tight end position. They signed Chris Mannertz yesterday. They still need a lead receiving tight end, someone who's going to be a good player to help Trevor Lawrence grow. Zach Ertz would be exactly that. And the other team that's kind of going under the radar in this area, Los Angeles Chargers, they lost Hunter Henry to the New England Patriots. They need to find a tight end option for their young quarterback, Justin Herbert. I think Zach Ertz would fit there as well. Let me know where you guys think Zach Ertz is going to land. Barry de Hatchet, a really great subscriber here on the channel, leaves a lot of comments on our videos. Says, if you were the Browns, would you draft an edge rusher or a cornerback with pick 26? I would opt for an edge. Myles Garrett consistently sees double teams, consistently is the focal point for offenses to block. If you add an edge, a quality one, possibly a guy like Jalen Phillips or Gregory Rousseau, who can really develop into a monster at that edge position, you're going to take a lot of pressure off of Myles Garrett. You're also going to open up a lot more avenues for him to get after the quarterback as well. He's already so dominant with getting double teamed consistently and all eyes being on him. If they can help him out a little bit by adding another edge yet at this point, that could be dangerous. Travis Owensby says, are the Packers going to do anything? I'm guessing not, unfortunately. If I'm Aaron, I'm redoing my contract, but they're not extending him before they tell me they are letting him go. Aaron Rodgers, he's not going to restructure his contract. I think he wants to get paid, and I don't blame him. If I was as good as he is, I would want to get paid handsomely. He is well worth every single penny he gets. Now, I get it. He probably wants a weapon, but that could come through the NFL draft. At this point, I just don't think that they're going to find a way to get a deal done with a guy like Will Fuller, who they'd ultimately love to get. But who knows? If Aaron Rodgers does restructure a little bit, try to lower his cap hit, that is something we could see happening. Catherick Bassani says, what happening with Marcus Mariota? Too expensive to be sitting on the bench. I completely agree. $10 million is a lot of money for a guy sitting on the bench. I think they would be well off trading him. However, some of those destinations have kind of shut themselves out. The Chicago Bears brought in Andy Dalton. That kind of silenced the Sam Darnold and Marcus Mariota to Chicago rumors. I think Washington bringing in Ryan Fitzpatrick kind of quieted that too. Marcus Mariota might be a guy who the Raiders look to actually extend in order to lower his cap hit this year. I know that's a little confusing, but they're going to probably look to make his deal a 2 or 3 year deal instead and try and stretch out some of that $10 million he's owed into maybe 17, 18, $20 million over the next 3 years. Try and lower his cap hit from about $10 million to maybe about $6 or $7 million, if that makes sense. Mikey Ez says, you guys often give 6+ hours of your day up for us. Shout outs to you guys. Hey, thank you so much. We really appreciate that. It is a grind. On Monday the other day, I didn't eat breakfast, lunch, or dinner because I had some other plans arranged as well. So I didn't actually eat that day because I was focused on live streaming, making sure that you guys got some premium content here at Utility Sports. I'm just hoping you guys are really enjoying what we're putting out, because everything we do is so that you guys can have fun watching our content. Also, really pick up on the latest news in the NFL. That is why we're bringing it to you. We also cover a lot of NBA, MLB, and some NHL and NCAA content as well. So this is the place to subscribe if you guys are liking the content. Maria Guzman says, seems like Cleveland best option this draft is trading up for Owusu Koromoa, whatever it takes, a first rounder from next year and this year's pick 26, maybe to Dallas at number 10 as a possibility. That's interesting. Dallas could be another team very interested in moving down. I don't know if you necessarily need to move up that high to get Owusu Koromoa, but if you really wanted to make sure you got him, pick 10 would do it. You'd go up there. You would for sure get Owusu Koromoa at that point right in front of the New York Giants. But I think realistic landing spot for Browns, if they did trade up, would be pick 15, trading with the New England Patriots. Maybe that has Odell Beckham Jr. involved, or trading with pick 16 to the Arizona Cardinals. You move up to 16. Arizona or the Patriots perhaps grab a guy like Micah Parsons right in front of you, and then you come back, grab Owusu Koromoa, who I think is the better fit into that defense, kind of filling that Eric Kendricks role on Kevin Stefanski's team there in Cleveland. Dane Skates wants to know, who should the Packers aim for in free agency? Their cap space situation is tight. They don't have a lot of ability to bring in guys, but if they did target someone, it would be Will Fuller. I think he is a perfect fit into that offense. They need someone who's going to be an elite down the field target. Will Fuller is that and more. I think he would be a great option for them. Monster7649 says, do you think a Mariota and a second to the Patriots and Gilmore to the Raiders swap could happen. Frees up money for the Patriots to re-sign J.C. Jackson, pushes Cam with a quarterback competition. That is an interesting point. Mariota would probably be best suited to land in New England. I had thought at one point that is a good landing spot for him. Then they re-signed Cam Newton before free agency. It would take Mariota in a second. Gilmore really solves the issue, one of the issues in the secondary at that cornerback position for Las Vegas. That is an interesting thing you bring up. I do think that could happen, although there is a lot of moving parts in that. Mariota not being on a long-term deal, maybe New England's a little scared of that. You'd have to extend him before you really get to see him play if Cam Newton does win the situation there. But, it's a pretty good low-buy option for New England. They do have the money to take Mariota in yet this year. They have about, let's see, how much money do they have yet about this offseason? They are sitting at about $16 million, so they could absorb him and still have a little bit left to play with. Brandon Kesey asking about the Jaguars GM Trent Baalke. Would you take Ertz or Njoku? That is a great question. Njoku is a younger, more athletic tight end. Ertz, a little bit more of a security blanket, could be a nice option. I would actually opt for David Njoku. I think what he could bring with Trevor Lawrence is a better pairing long-term. You need someone who's going to be able to stretch the field down the middle of the field, up the seam, someone who can run those quick in-out routes. Ertz, a little bit slower, but knows how to position himself well against zone coverage. I think both of these guys have their benefits. And honestly, if I'm Trent Baalke, I'd be actually considering getting both of them and running heavy 2 tight end sets. But I don't really see that at this point, especially not with Urban Meyer being the head coach. They're going to opt for one of them, and I think Njoku is the better fit. Let's see here. Angel Hernandez says, I heard that the Patriots might trade for Watson, but I don't know. He's been accused to. Yeah, those accusations are going to slow some things down on Deshaun Watson. Teams aren't going to want to acquire him until they know his name is for sure cleared. I'm very skeptical that anything actually happened there. I think Deshaun Watson's character speaks for itself. I'd be surprised if it comes out to finding him guilty in this situation. But at the same time, Patriots and Watson, it does make some sense, but they don't really have a ton of assets. They would have to do a lot of work trying to build up some assets, but I think the fit offensively would be good. Monster says, everyone like this up. Yes, please smash that like button on the live stream right here. I have no idea how many likes we're at, but let's try and get it to be more than what we're at right now for sure. Lauren Pearson says, I'm definitely not sending a top 5 quarterback for Marcus Mariota. I don't think he meant trade Cam Newton. I think he meant give Cam Newton some competition. And Cam Newton's also not a top 5 quarterback. Lauren, I think you said cornerback. Okay, I see what you're saying now. Cornerback Stephon Gilmore for Marcus Mariota. Yeah, the biggest thing in that is you're getting back that second-round pick anyway. Stephon Gilmore is probably worth about a second and a fourth, maybe second, fourth, and a sixth. So Marcus Mariota then essentially at that point is worth a 4th-round pick. That is actually a pretty good deal in terms of what Mariota is worth. Thank you for clearing that up, though, with this comment saying cornerback Stephon Gilmore. You did not mean quarterback. I see what you were saying now. Really appreciate your comments here on the channel. Hot Sauce Junkie Tim says, any word on a possible Patrick Peterson return to Arizona? Yeah, Patrick Peterson kind of trolled everyone last night, posting a picture of him in a Cardinals uniform, and then later said just a dope pick, kind of alluding to a possible return. Fans thought it meant he's for sure back. However, at this point, he hasn't committed anywhere. I do think that it is possible, though, still at this point. Mikey says Fuller stays healthy, which we've never seen, would be amazing for the league. Yes, no kidding. A healthy Will Fuller is a very good Will Fuller. He is a top 35 wide receiver in the NFL when he's healthy. No question about that. Even could be as high as top 25, top 20 possibly with the way that he stretches the field. Think Robbie Anderson with even more athleticism. That's kind of what we see out of Will Fuller when he's healthy. I would just hope he stays healthy for one entire year coming up. Lauren Pearson says, how about the New England Patriots look to go get T.Y. Hilton? That's an interesting thought. However, they already have Julian Edelman there. I think T.Y. Hilton and him kind of fill that same role. They'd be better off looking for someone who could be a big body wide receiver threat who's going to be able to get off the line of scrimmage. Think Rashad Bateman. That's who I would love for the New England Patriots. He fits perfectly what they need. They got their field stretcher in Nelson Aguilar yesterday. They got their tight ends who are red zone threats. They have Julian Edelman, their slot guy. They just need one bigger-bodied wide receiver with solid speed and good ability to get off the line of scrimmage. That is Rashad Bateman. That's the way I see them going in the NFL draft now at this point. NFL, welcome back to the stream today. Glad to have you in here. He says, I can see Fuller going to the Packers to add a weapon for Rodgers. I think that's the best fit for Will Fuller. The issue is the salary cap situation there in Green Bay. It is just a lot tougher at this point. Frank Willis wants to know, please tell me why the Seahawks didn't take a 3 first and 3 firsts and a third and 2 starters for Wilson, because Russell Wilson's worth way more than that. Russell Wilson's worth at least 4 firsts, probably 2 seconds, and 2 starters at least, and probably a starting quarterback in return. That is my starting point. I'm asking for at least 4 first-round picks and more for Russell Wilson. I'm not going to trade him for anything less. He's still a relatively young quarterback, just into his early 30s. At this point, you don't need to move on from him. You have a little bit of team control yet at this point, too. He's not going to sit out games, and he's too good of a quarterback, top 3 in the NFL. You can't just move him at any given moment. I know 3 first-round picks is a lot, but you're going to need more for a guy of Russell Wilson's caliber. Karthik Basani says, way too early predictions for the NFC West. That is the division that everyone loves to talk about right now. That is the hottest division in football. The Cardinals, much improved already this offseason, just added Rodney Hudson today, J.J. Watt a little bit earlier on in the offseason. Once I see their cornerback situation, it's going to really hopefully improve their situation as well. But at this point, I think you have to look at the Seahawks as the winner of that division. Just barely, though. I think that they're still a very talented team, assuming Russell Wilson plays for them, doesn't get traded. Seattle Seahawks are still the best team there. I think then the San Francisco 49ers are the next best team. I know that their offense needs some work, but that front seven is incredible. The Los Angeles Rams, next best team in that division. And when I'm giving you this order, I think about a game separates all of these teams, those top 3 specifically. I wouldn't be surprised if the 49ers even won the division. I just listed them third. Or if the Rams won the division, I just listed them third. That's how close this is. This division is absolutely stacked. But right now I'm going to say the Rams are third. Aaron Donald's a beast. Jalen Ramsey's a beast. I'm glad they got Leonard Floyd back. Matthew Stafford, a massive upgrade for them at quarterback. I just have concerns about their tight end room. Lost Gerald Everett. He's probably not coming back. I have concerns about their tackle position. They don't have a first-round pick this year to improve. I think that they're going to be a team doesn't take a step back, but they just haven't taken a big enough step forward, even with the acquisition of Matthew Stafford. And then I still have the Cardinals fourth, which is kind of crazy because the Cardinals would probably be a team that I could look at winning multiple divisions in the NFL. This division's just so tough. I wouldn't be surprised if all 4 of these teams make the playoffs, representing the 3 wildcard spots. That would be incredible if that does happen. In a 17-game season, I think that they could all go 9-8 or better, which I don't think has ever been done in football, where a division has all winning records. That would be absolutely incredible if that does happen. Flashy YT says, if the Patriots do not take Mac Jones at pick 15, what should they take? Wide receiver Rashad Bateman. Was just talking about that. I love Rashad Bateman. I think he's going to be a stud wide receiver in this draft, and he would be a great grab for my rival New England Patriots. Tommy Schreier says, thoughts on the defensive tackle duo with the Vikings? Incredible. That is a wonderful addition of Delvin Tomlinson to the Minnesota Vikings. Reminds me of a younger Linval Joseph back in the day when he went over to the Minnesota Vikings. And the Vikings, when they've been great, they've had great defensive tackle play. Think about the Williams wall with Pat and Kevin Williams years ago. Now also they have a few years back, they had Linval Joseph and Sharif Floyd. Now at this point, it's going to be Delvin Tomlinson, Michael Pierce, and they get Danielle Hunter back on that D-line. They have one of the best defensive lines in football now. Mike Zimmer, known for his 4-3 defense, the versatile looks he gives you with that double A-gap blitz, even an occasional triple A-gap blitz look with Harrison Smith also stepping in between linebackers Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks. This is the year for the Minnesota Vikings to really have a shot at going deep into the playoffs. You got Anthony Barr on his final year of his deal, Harrison Smith nearing the end of his prime probably, Eric Kendricks right in the heart of his prime, Delvin Cook entering his prime, Kirk Cousins, a very good NFL quarterback. That team is very dangerous. I hope to see the Minnesota Vikings playing good playoff football this next season. Lauren Pearson saying pick 15 and Jonathan Jones because he is a faster receiver for Odell Beckham Jr. Odell Beckham Jr. is just not going to get traded for a first-round pick. I'm sorry to tell you that, but he is not worth a first-rounder anymore at this point. Mikey says, not giving up Wilson, dude. Get out of here. With that, there's no guarantee we hit on all of those and didn't involve a quarterback replacement this year. That's why. Exactly, Mikey. They're not going to move on from a quarterback as good as Russell Wilson until they absolutely have to. Kyler Crawford, he's been in here all week. Thank you so much, Kyler, for sticking around in all of our streams. He says, Raiders are making moves today. I was super worried. Now I'm not. Incognito, Denzel Good getting re-signed is perfect. John Brown was a good signing. Do you know if the Hudson trade saved us money? I do think it did save you a little bit of money. Not a huge difference, though, against the cap. I think it might have saved $2 million. It depends, too, if he did work out an extension or a renegotiation, restructured deal with the Arizona Cardinals. We will see kind of what that whole situation plays out, though. And we'll get that news out to you as soon as we can. Let's see here. Sid and C says the stream is at 68 likes. Thank you guys for all the support so far. Let's try and get that up to 75 at least. That's only 7 more likes from where we're at. I know you guys can do it. We have 100 plus people watching live right now. Hit that like button if you haven't already. We really appreciate it, guys. You guys have been killing it. Mikey says that the Seahawks have signed Witherspoon. That's about it. When Sid and C asked if the Hawks have done anything. And that's really it. Ahkello Witherspoon, they've been moving slowly in free agency, don't have a lot of money. They have to be calculated in what they do. You guys understand that, but they're taking this approach pretty slowly. And I still think that the Seahawks are a very good team. They don't need to do as much in free agency as other teams other than address that offensive line. Maria Guzman says, I do believe Cleveland is going to trade up and probably trade Odell Beckham this offseason. This free agency has been good, not great. They've got to be in the edge linebacker quarterback film room, especially for the NFL draft. I completely agree. The one thing about saying this free agency has been good, not great, you did get one stay market in John Johnson, and that was, I believe, your biggest need defensively after watching you guys last year. Andrew Sendejo just wasn't cutting it. Ronnie Harrison, he's young. Sure, I think he's a solid option at safety. Grant Delpit, he's young. I think he's a solid option at safety, but I've got my questions about both of them. Ronnie Harrison, I don't really know what his long-term upside is in the NFL. Grant Delpit, I really liked him coming out of LSU. However, he suffered an Achilles tear. That is a serious injury that might affect his career trajectory. You got John Johnson, an absolute playmaker when the ball's in the air. I think he's a perfect fit with the Cleveland Browns. Now, like you said, linebacker, edge, corner, it's going to be some more defensive work for the Cleveland Browns moving forward. Monster here with another question. You think Pat Pete is out on Cardinals with the Hudson deal? Yeah, more than likely. I think that Pat Pete is still a possible return, but it's going to be on a one-year deal, if anything. I would be surprised if he is back with Arizona, but I'm not completely ruling it out. Brandon Kesey says Jacksonville has a chance to win the AFC South. I mean, they've gotten a lot better. Don't get me wrong, Brandon. I've been very vocal that I think that Jacksonville is one of those teams where they can make a very quick jump and be a near playoff team. With the amount of assets that they have in the NFL draft, the difference from Mike Glennon to Trevor Lawrence is massive. You've gotten a lot better in a lot of different areas. However, winning the AFC South is going to take a lot. Tennessee, I know they've lost a couple of guys, but they still have Derrick Henry, they still have Ryan Tannehill, and they have A.J. Brown. That is a tough trio to deal with. The Indianapolis Colts, they've gotten better this offseason. They added Carson Wentz. I think he's an upgrade over Phillip Rivers. Once they re-sign Xavier Rhodes, I think that they're going to be the team to beat in that division ultimately. It's a tough division. The Houston Texans are a really weak team. Jaguars were really weak past year. They are much better now, but I still think that you guys have some work to do. And maybe during the NFL draft, once I see who you guys add, maybe I have a better belief in Jacksonville becoming a playoff team out of the AFC South. Sergio here says, is J.C. Jackson a free agent? Yes, he is technically a restricted free agent. The Patriots today put a second-round tender on J.C. Jackson. He is the best cornerback available on the market at this point. He's young, talented, a great playmaker, can really lock up in man-to-man coverage as well. I love what J.C. Jackson brings to the table. Now, in order to get him, a team's going to have to give up their second-round pick to sign him and probably give him a massive payday here in free agency. We'll see what his market shapes up to be. He will be a name to watch, though, moving forward. Lauren Pearson says, I love your live streams, man. Keep it up. And everyone, please subscribe and like. He is one of the most underrated YouTubers. Thank you so much, Lauren. We really appreciate that. We've been absolutely killing it with the support lately. You guys have been doing so great. If you aren't subscribed, please do so. That would mean so much to us here at Utility Sports. We can't do it without you guys. Like I've said multiple times here on the channel, we have the best viewers on the planet. I firmly believe that. You guys are a special group of people that come in and watch our channel, leave great comments. It's obvious how intelligent you guys are about football as well with the questions, your knowledge about the league. I really appreciate everything that you guys bring into the live stream yourselves. You guys come with good energy, makes it a lot easier for me to come and talk some football with you guys too. I really appreciate everything that you guys do for us here on the channel. It means so much. Turn on those notification bells too if you haven't already. Mikey says, what do you think we could get for Tyler Lockett? Probably not a ton. I don't think Tyler Lockett should be really on the trade block at this point. I think you guys are best suited trying to keep him and DK Metcalf moving forward. I think you could probably get a third-round pick. Just remember, wide receivers, they don't tend to go for the highest picks because wide receivers are kind of becoming a dime a dozen. There's a lot of good wide receivers in this year's class. There was a ton last year. I think that is a deep wide receiver class yet again and kind of devalues some of the good wide receivers in the NFL. Flashy YT says, what do you think the Patriots would have to give up to get Deshaun? And wow, this is a loaded question. They'd have to give up probably 4 first-round picks this year, next year, the year after, and the following year. And the reason it would have to be 4 is because of how stretched out those picks are. It's not like some of these other teams where the Jets can give up 2 firsts this year, 2 firsts next year. You know, the Jets have all their picks a lot closer because of some of their other moves. Same with the Miami Dolphins. And the Patriots don't really have a ton of young defensive players that they're able to give up. J.C. Jackson would be the guy that they have to send back to Houston, but right now he is a free agent. We'll see if he is back. Benjamin Goldner says, should the Browns trade for Kendall Fuller from the Bears? He is probably on the trade block. 1 year left on his deal. Yeah, I think Kendall Fuller is probably on the trade block. We had talked a little bit earlier about him maybe going to the Denver Broncos. I think that's a better fit than the Cleveland Browns, but I think the Browns should at least investigate that situation, do a little bit of digging, a little bit of research, give the Bears some calls, see what's going on. I think the Bears are going to be a team very active in the trade marketplace over the next few weeks. Anthony Miller could be a guy we see get traded. In addition to him, Allen Robinson's going to generate a lot of interest around the league. And a few other players as well are definitely going to be on the block for the Chicago Bears rather. Edgar V says, we need Sherman as a mentor to our young guys. He is talking about the Las Vegas Raiders. And I'm a Jets fan, and I couldn't agree more about our own situation. We need Richard Sherman as well. I think Richard Sherman is going to be a valuable player for whatever team gets him on a short-term deal. Brandon Casey says, well been watching while I'm at work, but got to go. Hopefully you are all back tomorrow. Thank you, Brandon, so much for stopping into the stream. You know how much we appreciate you here at Utility Sports. It really means a lot having you in here again today. Thank you. Have a good time at work and take it easy. Gemma and Lily here says, with the Rams cleaning up some cap space, who could they be looking to grab? The Rams are actually looking to clear up cap space for one reason and one reason only, because they are very far negative. They're still about negative $17 million at this point after clearing up some cap space. They just found a new deal rather with Leonard Floyd, paid him pretty handsomely, $16 million. The reason that they're doing some moves to clear up cap spaces so that they can actually afford to keep him. They have to keep working on those contracts. Otherwise, they're going to be an interesting situation to monitor with the cap space. KX is asking here, say the Bills went with a running back. Who would you pick, Najee Harris or Travis Etienne? And do you think this is a smart move? I do think a running back would be a very smart move at pick 30. I think that the Bills really do need to figure out a long-term run game option, someone who fits around what Brian Dable does, their offensive coordinator, someone who fits with Josh Allen as a pass catcher out of the backfield, and someone who can play out of the gun, which is severely what their system calls for. And because of that, I think Najee Harris is the better running back between these two, but Travis Etienne is the far better fit in Buffalo, in my opinion. A much better pass catcher, a much better option out of the back when it comes to receiving. If they don't go with a running back round 1, though, you don't need to worry. There is some other good options in the later rounds. Kenneth Gainwell being one of my favorites. Javonte Williams out of UNC, another good option in round 2. Monster here is asking, what do you think about the Trevor Ariza deal? Where do you think Drummond goes? Okay, so I saw that Ariza got traded. I don't even know to what team. So if you could leave me the information there, I'll give you my thoughts on that NBA news real quick there as well. That would be awesome, Monster, if you could give me that. And I think Drummond, he'll probably get bought out and probably go to a team like the Los Angeles Lakers looking for some front court depth with Anthony Davis out, or probably the Dallas Mavericks could really use a rebounder this year. I mean, we've been absolutely terrible in that department. Sergio here is asking, is it still possible for the Patriots to pick up a wide receiver? It is. They have the money to bring in a guy. Maybe you look at a 1-year massive overpay, like a 1-year $20 million deal. That could be something that would work out well for the New England Patriots. I know that's a massive overpay on a 1-year value, but they don't have a lot of future money. Now, after some of these other deals, they went with reduced cap hit this first year. So maybe they look to draft one as well. That would be a good long-term option. I've said multiple times this stream that Rashad Bateman out of the University of Minnesota, if you guys haven't watched him, I highly recommend you do. Kyron says, you think cornerback or offensive tackle is a bigger need for Dallas as of now? Cornerback, for sure. The Dallas Cowboys need to find a cornerback. Their secondary was brutal last year. They also need to find at least one safety, maybe even 2. Xavier Woods is on his way out. More than likely, I think that Dallas needs to focus that secondary as much as possible. They already did sign Ty and Seki yesterday as an offensive tackle option for them, kind of giving themselves some depth. NFL says teams running out of money think remaining players will be bargains. Not really. I think the wide receivers are going to come at a bargain. I think that the market there is a little bit drier than everyone had assumed it would be. Teams spent a lot of money on the edges, but I don't think that there's going to be all bargains. I think that a few players are still going to get paid. I think David Andrews at that center position is going to get paid pretty well. But for the most part, I do think that some of these moves will be a little bit slower, a little bit drier, and somewhat reduced in annual value. But that is not necessarily just because of what we've already seen, but it's also because of the reduced cap salary number this year for the NFL in a whole. Remember, it dropped from 199 down to 182. That is a very significant decrease. That's about 2 very good players ultimately for each NFL team that they can't afford to pay. Luke Capsco says, now that the new league year started, can teams spend all the money they want? Yeah, they can spend up to the entire salary cap that they want. That is kind of the situation that they can go about. Kyler Crawford here asking about the Raiders says, what is their cap space situation as it sits currently? They have just under $16 million. I believe it's 15.6 million or so. It'll be interesting to see. That number is going to get adjusted a little bit with this whole Rodney Hudson situation, but that is the closest estimate I can give you at this point, Kyler. Thank you for the question. GRGRX here with a donates just about $1 here, 99 cents. It doesn't have a message with it. GRGRX, we really appreciate all the support you've shown to the channel the last couple days. You have been absolutely killing it this week with the support. Everyone, round of applause for GRGRX and his support to the channel. We really appreciate it. Everyone hit that like button. I heard we were at 78 likes. Let's try and get that number to at least 85. Okay, since he says, bro, we're at 81 likes. Great job, man. Let's get that number to 85. I need 4 more likes from you guys. Let's see if we can do it. Cody Rose 2020 says, I want to thank the New York Jets for giving the Panthers Robbie Anderson. I know I, as a New York Jets fan, was very sad when he left. That was one of the first things Joe Douglas did as GM of the New York Jets, was not give Robbie Anderson a new deal. And we saw how good he was for the Carolina Panthers, even with a subpar quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater. It was clear how good Robbie Anderson is as a wide receiver. He had been one of the few bright spots for the New York Jets. Now instead, he is a bright spot for the Carolina Panthers. I'm glad that you're enjoying him there in Carolina. It's good that he is having his career celebrated somewhere because the Jets didn't value him enough. Jerger asks, how do you think the AFC East will shape out next year? Bills win the division. The Dolphins are probably the second best team in the division. They have a ton of assets this year. Look at them to be one of those teams that really take a jump forward in how they kind of play out next season. Patriots going to be a very competitive team. They're going to be right on the tails of the Miami Dolphins, though. And I think that they're going to be a team that is a near playoff team, maybe slip into a wild card seed. We'll see yet at this point. I'm not sure. There's still a lot to happen with the NFL draft and some of these dates of the NFL free agency. And the New York Jets are the bottom dwellers in free agency. Look at us winning probably 4, maybe 5 games. That's kind of my thought, but that's a big time improvement over what we were this year. We were absolutely terrible this year. I think Robert Saleh is going to take us in the right direction. We just have a lot of work to do. Mikey says, Knicks fan here also. That is completely awesome. Love to have basketball fans in here. We have a lot of basketball content on the channel. I am usually the NBA draft expert here. Do a lot of writing for this last year's NBA draft. I wrote about 140 pages or so on the prospects. I do a ton of watching film analysis, really breaking down what I'm seeing. If that's something you guys would be interested in finding out more about, that would be great. Okay, Monster here with the news on the NBA. We're going to just spend a little bit of time here, probably about 30 seconds on the NBA, guys. He says Myers Leonard and a second for Ariza. Okay, so Ariza goes to the Miami Heat. They get rid of the Myers Leonard situation. That obviously was a mess for Miami. They weren't screwing around, wanted to move on from him quick, even paid to get off of him. And they brought in Trevor Ariza, a guy who I think is pretty valuable. Can stretch the floor for them, kind of fills that Jay Crowder role. I was very vocal saying they were going to miss Jay Crowder this year, and it is the truth. They have missed Jay Crowder up to this point. I think Ariza is a pretty good low-risk grab for them, and they get off of a messy situation with Myers Leonard. Maria Guzman says, are the Cleveland Browns afraid of becoming a team in the red, and how much do you think Baker Mayfield is worth? I honestly don't think he'll get re-signed. Well, I don't think the Browns are afraid of becoming a team in the red. I think that they're just, being a little patient with their cap space, making calculated decisions. Baker Mayfield is worth at least $25 million a year. In my opinion, he's a solid NFL quarterback. That's the going price on quarterbacks these days. I would love to know what you guys think about Mayfield. I do think he will get re-signed there in Cleveland. Let's see here. Lewis Howery says Chiefs need to get Juju. That would be insane if they did. They do have some cap space still at this point that they could play around with. Let me pull up their exact number for the Kansas City Chiefs. They have just a little bit under $10 million in estimated cap space. We'll see if they're able to, structure a couple more contracts and open up a little bit more space at this point. Rico Johnson wants to know, what's the next move for the Baltimore Ravens? That's a great question, and it's going to be really being patient. They don't have a ton of money themselves. Let me pull up the Ravens cap space situation. Now, at this point, they are sitting at, let me see if I can find them. They are sitting at about $14 million. They could look to maybe find a situational pass rusher. I think that could really benefit them, someone who can play off of Tyus Bowser at that outside linebacker position. But look for them to really just kill things in the NFL draft. They constantly draft really, really well. Expect them to do the same this year. They're a very smart organization. You don't have no need to worry about the Baltimore Ravens making the right decision during the offseason. Tommy Schreier says, what team in the NFL deserves a Super Bowl more than anybody? That is a great question. Deserve, I don't know if that's the right word, but one team that I think has come close so many times that doesn't have one is the Minnesota Vikings. They've been in the Super Bowl 4 times, lost all 4 times, lost twice in the NFC Conference Championship game. Over the last 13 years or so, they lost to the New Orleans Saints in 2009 when Brett Favre threw across his body, intercepted by Tracy Porter, and then also lost a couple of years back to the Philadelphia Eagles there in Philadelphia to the Nick Foles-led team. They were close multiple times, just didn't really get it done. I don't know if I'd say they deserve it, because if they deserved it, they would have won one. But I think that they're a team that's been so close multiple times. That organization is due for one at some point in the near future, hopefully, for their own good. Let's see here. Edgar V says, like your channel, bro, go Raiders, with a $2 donation. That means so much, Edgar. You've been absolutely wonderful to have in the live stream. We really appreciate your presence in here. You've been leaving great questions about the Las Vegas Raiders free agency in general. It's been a pleasure having you in here. So thank you so much also for the donation. It means a lot. Burger Does Sports is done. 85th like. That's awesome. I can't even see the like counter. Guys, let's try ahead and let's try to go get that number to 90 likes if we can right now. That is absolutely wonderful. Since he says we're at 89, let's get it to 95 then. As long as we're that close, that would be absolutely incredible. You guys have been magnificent. JRX says, I would have put something in the super chat, but you can't if it's only $1. Oh, I did not know that, JRX. Well, I still really appreciate the dollar. And I'm going to try and get to your comments still every time we can. It means so much to have the support from you guys. And those dollar donos do go a really long way in trying to help us build up the channel. Every time you guys donate, that money's going back into the channel. We're looking to add a whole bunch of different stuff, maybe some graphic design guys, a whole bunch of different things to really improve the channel for you guys. We just want you guys to have the best experience with the channel. Seahawk for life here asks, has the Broncos signed anyone, and who would you think that they need? The Broncos are a very interesting situation. Let me pull up their moves here now at this point. I think that this is one of the teams that's really worth monitoring moving forward because they've been pretty quiet, actually. Let's add this back into the stream here. They re-signed Shelby Harris to a 3-year deal worth $27 million. They gave Ronald Darby a 3-year, $30 million deal, probably a slight overpay there. And they franchise tag Justin Simmons. Clearly focused on defense, keep their star safety, keep their star D tackle, bring in a cornerback. Look for them in the draft to probably still add another cornerback. And I think that they should be aggressive looking at linebackers. Jayon Brown did leave the board today. Some linebackers have gotten signed. Maybe Keanu Neal would be a good acquisition. I think he's a perfect complement to Justin Simmons at that safety position. Justin Simmons can kind of play that free roam, free safety spot. Keanu Neal can be that physical presence at strong safety. I think that would be pretty good for them. Caleb Farley is probably going to be the pick at 9th overall. That's just kind of my estimation on the situation. Benjamin Goldner says, thank you so much for the great content, man. Keep it up. Love the likes. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Benjamin Goldner. We really appreciate you've been in here all day, too, asking wonderful questions. It means a lot having your guys' support. Mike Rawson wants to know about the Cincinnati Bengals. So let's go ahead and take a look here if the Bengals have made any moves today. At this point, I don't think they really have, but they've had a pretty busy offseason in general. Let's add them to the stream here. Quarterback Brendan Allen, they re-signed him earlier on. Trey Hendrickson, we know the situation there. They got their pass rusher replacement to Carl Lawson. They brought in 2 cornerbacks, Chidobe Awuzie from the Dallas Cowboys, and also Mike Hilton from the interdivision rival Pittsburgh Steelers. They also brought in their long snapper, Clark Harris, back. That is about it from the Bengals. They have been very quiet today, but so far they've addressed some of their needs. Look for them to maybe find a guard in free agency. I think that would be the best case scenario, so that at pick 5 here in the NFL draft, they could look to either grab a wide receiver for Joe Burrow or an offensive tackle to protect him, keep him upright. Those are the best situations for the Cincinnati Bengals. Kyler Crawford says, Jags getting trade calls on Minshew and Jets not getting many calls for Darnold makes 0 sense to me. I understand why you think that, but I can explain this real quick on the reasoning. Sam Darnold going into his 4th year of his rookie deal contract, teams are going to have to make a decision if they want to pick up his 5th year option, which is going to be an expensive number. Whereas Minshew, there's a little bit more team control, and you can get him for a lot cheaper. And he's had similar success as Sam Darnold in a lot of ways, if not more. If you pull up the numbers on Minshew this past year versus Sam Darnold, you'd be surprised how stark it is in favor of Gardner Minshew. Now, there's more to football than just the statistics eye test. Sam Darnold sometimes makes more beautiful throws, has a little bit more arm talent, I'd say. But Minshew has a lot of good qualities as well as an NFL quarterback. He was playing in a terrible situation as well, and statistically has found success over the last 2 years. I think that Minshew is well worth trading for an NFL team. I think Darnold is as well, but there's more situational concerns there with what his contract looks like. Hopefully that does solve that question there for you, Kyler. Mikey says, please do a mock. We do mock drafts here on the channel all the time. Go check out our most recent ones. That was before free agency, though. We're going to have quite a big shakeup. We usually put a lot of time and preparation into our mock. So before we get one out for you guys, we're going to have to really sit down, think about the best landing spots for some of these prospects now, especially as free agents continue to sign. But those will be coming out soon. If you guys are interested in watching that, make sure you're subscribed, have the notification bell on so that you don't miss out on any of our premium content here at Utility Sports. Colin Lingham says the Lions have officially released Desmond Trufant. Yes, that was announced a few days ago that they were going to release Desmond Trufant. Now it is official. Thank you for putting that in the chat, Colin. I think that Trufant would be a very solid cornerback option for a few teams looking for a budget corner. Maybe the Seattle Seahawks looking for another cornerback in play there. I know they already brought in Ahkello Witherspoon, but another one would not hurt at all. Anton Montez says, do you want the Jets to keep or trade Sam Darnold? I am a Jets fan, and I want to trade Sam Darnold. I am not a fan of Sam Darnold at all. I wasn't before we drafted him. I wasn't the moment we drafted him. I wasn't at all after we drafted him. I've been pretty much on the same wavelength for about the last 4 years or so that I did not want Sam Darnold. He is too careless with the football. He doesn't have enough arm talent to really elevate his receivers, and I think he's a poor decision maker more often than not. That's kind of my situation with Sam Darnold. I'd love to know what you guys think on Darnold. Bean on B says, Saints, if you're asking about the Saints, they haven't really done anything. They've been trying to figure out their cap space situation. They did lose Janoris Jenkins, but the Saints, they're still a good roster. They kept Jameis Winston around. Look for them to still be competitive next season. Here we go. Maria Guzman says Sam Darnold is up there with Tim Couch and very bad choices early in the draft. Yeah, no kidding. Think about this. Sam Darnold was drafted before Josh Allen. He was drafted before Lamar Jackson. That doesn't age well for you. Baker Mayfield was the first overall pick in that draft. The Jets just didn't really land in a good situation with how the draft kind of played out, but that is kind of what we're seeing here. Cody Rose says, do state taxes apply to player contracts? For example, Trent Williams will get $20 million a year in Cali compared to $20 million a year in Seattle, Washington. Taxes do apply to players' contracts. It's just like any other job in the NFL. For example, if Trent Williams got $23 million a year in Texas versus $23 million a year in California, he would make roughly on that 6-year deal about $18 to $25 million actually more playing in Texas than he does in California because of how stark California income taxes are, whereas Texas has no income tax. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys on the situation. Burger Does Sports says we're almost at 100 likes. Guys, if you haven't hit that like button, let's try and get us to 100. That would be so awesome. You guys have killed it. All week long, you have killed it. We really appreciate it, guys. Let's try and get us to 100 likes today. Last question for today, says Rico Johnson. What would it take for Orlando Brown trade to the Dolphins for Preston Williams? Oh, what about an Orlando Brown trade to the Dolphins for Preston Williams and a swap late first? They're not the Browns are going to want more than a swap. I don't know if you necessarily meant like they swap first, but I more likely than not, the Ravens would want just pick 18 and probably not Preston Williams, but a different young player in exchange for Orlando Brown, or maybe like a later pick, like a round 4, round 5 asset on top of the pick 18, which I think would be a pretty good addition for the Miami Dolphins. Orlando Brown would be a phenomenal player for the Miami Dolphins. The only issue is you do have to give him a contract almost immediately. Jonathan Johnson says, I hope the Cowboys make at least one splash signing in free agency on defense before the draft. Yeah, definitely. I look at them trying to make that move too. Patrick Peterson, maybe Richard Sherman. They're going to look at that cornerback situation. Desmond King would be a no-brainer. He could kind of fill into what that Byron Jones role was a few years back before he left for Miami. I would love that. RJ Vega here says, good content. Appreciate it. Go Raiders. Thanks to RJ Vega for stopping in. It's actually funny. We have another subscriber on the channel named R Vega, who is a diehard Chargers fan. So I think you two would maybe hit it off a little bit with that AFC West rivalry. That would be really funny. R Vega, one of our greatest subscribers, really loves to come into our chats and leaves great comments as well. RJ Vega, I'm glad you're enjoying the content. Really love having you here. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on our future content. And RJ Vega says we hit 102 likes. Guys, I appreciate you all so much. You have absolutely killed it today, yesterday, and the day before. I appreciate you guys more than you could even know. Big part of the channel is what you guys actually bring to our live streams. You guys come with great questions, great comments. You keep us up to date on some of the news as well. When I'm missing it coming through the live stream, you guys have been killing it lately. Really appreciate everything you've done. NFL here says, do you think Clowney is done? He has gone from a top D lineman to unwanted quick. I don't think he's necessarily done, but I don't think he's ever getting that big-time contract that he wants. I think he's going to spend the next few years probably getting one-year deals, jumping around, looking for a place to land. And hopefully for him, he finds that contract and that place that he can really call home. At the end of the day, Jadeveon Clowney's still a human being. I don't think he wants to be moving city to city, trying to really find ways to live out his career. I think he wants to, at some point, find a place where he could settle down, call it home, have that be the place that he stays for a while. And at this point, he just hasn't really had that opportunity. It is very interesting to see how quick the NFL can shift on you, though. He went from being a former number 1 overall pick to now not really having a strong market here on the open market. Very interesting. Thank you for that comment, NFL. Tommy Schreier says, I just feel like Darnold has nothing with him, so he cannot do much. Like, why blame him? The Jets have no offensive pieces. I know, I understand. I really do. You're not wrong. Darnold doesn't have a lot around him. But at the same time, we've seen Aaron Rodgers in the past be really successful with not a lot of pieces around him. Recent past year, he's had Devontae Adams. But there was a stretch there between the Greg Jennings, Donald Driver era up to the Devontae Adams era where he didn't have a lot and he was still successful. The Packers were still successful, and that's because of how great of a quarterback he is. The questions on Darnold aren't, is he an NFL level quarterback? No, the question is, can he be a franchise quarterback for the New York Jets? The answer to that is no. Zach Wilson has a much higher chance of being a franchise quarterback. That's why there's concerns. And at some point here soon, you're going to have to make a decision if he is your franchise QB or not, because you have to pay him a big-time contract or look at that fifth-year option, and that's going to be north of $20 million. That is a big-time investment for a guy who hasn't proven himself to be a franchise guy. Ryder Play says, where do you think the Jags go at 25? Really easy here. Trayvon Merrick, safety out of TCU. They already addressed one safety spot with Rayshawn Jenkins. They need to double down on it. Find another guy. I think Rayshawn Jenkins and Trayvon Merrick would complement each other well in that secondary. They've already added in 2 cornerbacks, with one being a re-sign in Sidney Jones, and now they also brought in Shaquille Griffin as well. They've done a very good job in free agency addressing that defense. I think it's got to be Trevor Lawrence at pick 1, probably Trayvon Merrick at pick 25 with their second first-rounder. If they don't go with Trayvon Merrick, I think offensive tackle is a real option. Edgar V wants to know who do you think we can use to replace Hudson? From the sounds of it, it sounds like Andre James is an option, your guys' backup center. I haven't seen him too closely, though, so I can't really speculate on that too much. Ted Karras is off the board. I think if you guys did add a center this offseason, it'll be through the draft. Possibly Trey Smith out of Tennessee would be a good fit there. Maria Guzman wants to know, are the John Elway comparisons true about Trevor Lawrence? I understand why those comparisons are going through. I think a better one is just Andrew Luck in terms of what their college careers looked like, what their NFL impact's going to be. And luckily, the Jaguars, unlike the Colts, are going to have a better infrastructure in place for when that franchise QB comes in because of how many draft assets they have from trades like the Jalen Ramsey deal, Calais Campbell trade, all that stuff. They've been able to build up some young talent, and they have more assets on the way as well. I think that they're doing very well. Scotty Snags here says that Xavier Rhodes to Philadelphia would be very nice. I think that Xavier Rhodes is one of those underrated free agents right now at this point. They are he's a very solid corner, has his ups and downs, but when he's healthy, he's very, very solid. I think he'd be a nice option for Philadelphia as well. And Merlin wants to know, should the Vikings sign Mackenzie Alexander? Short answer, yes. They could use him in the slot again. He fits well into Mike Zimmer's defense. They really missed him this past year. Cornerback play was terrible. Mike Hughes just not the cornerback of the future like they wanted him to be when they spent the first-round pick on him. And I just have a lot of questions. I think Cameron Dancer is really the only cornerback that showed himself being really worth, really being worth a building block, really being a building block for the Minnesota Vikings. The rest of that secondary, I think, at that cornerback position was very, very tough. Cody Rose saying, considering James Robinson was the only consistent weapon in Jacksonville, do you think that James Robinson will have an all-pro season based on the revamp? No, I don't think so. I think that they'll actually be less focused on pounding the ball with James Robinson and a little bit more balance this year, which is good. The one thing about James Robinson is I think he's a very talented player. I just don't necessarily know if I'm willing to commit to him as an all-pro type player. I mean, he's not the best running back in his division, let alone in the NFL. Derrick Henry is going to be one of those league guys for an all-pro selection. Again, Christian McCaffrey, when he's healthy, is an all-pro type running back. Aaron Jones, even staying in Green Bay, despite probably being an overpay, I think he would be more of a league candidate than James Robinson. That's a very good question, Cody Rose. I really do appreciate that. And who knows, maybe James Robinson comes back way better next year. He caught me off guard this year. Maybe he catches me off guard again next year. I wouldn't necessarily fully rule it out. I would just be surprised if that is the case. Antonio Mancini's asking if the Jets have signed anyone today. No, the Jets have been quiet today. Still have a lot of money in cap space, though, and I think that would be a good addition if they go out and get a wide receiver, maybe a guy like Curtis Samuel. Seahawk for life says, could Seattle pick up Desmond Trufant or another cornerback since Shaquille Griffin is gone? Yes, I had actually just mentioned Desmond Trufant as a good piece for you guys. I think he would be a solid cornerback addition there in Seattle. Scotty Snaggs asked about the Philadelphia Eagles again, says, do you think Philly may shock some people and land one of these last three receivers? I'm a little bit more skeptical about that at this point. The Eagles are, I believe, negative in the cap space. They have about negative $15 million, if I'm speculating correctly. I know they're right around that number somewhere. I would just be surprised if Philadelphia is able to pull something out there. But who knows? Crazier things have happened. If they really figure out how to restructure some deals, recenter themselves. But I think ultimately it'll be wide receiver or pass catcher Kyle Pitts in the NFL draft. That's kind of what I see. David Jones, you left a super chat. I don't know how I missed it. Let me go up and look for it. I am so sorry. David Jones, thank you so much for pointing that out to me. I did not mean to miss that. That is, I just don't know how I missed it. I'm very sorry about that, David. It says, if you were Atlanta, would you take 15, 47, and Gilmore from New England for 4? That is a great question. They're one of the best questions, actually. And I think if I was Atlanta, I would be really, really in a position where I'd have to consider that 15 and 47 and Gilmore, pick 4. That is a great haul. You're getting a still pretty high-end first, a good second-round pick, and a great cornerback for 4. I think at this point, though, I would probably opt to not, because I don't think Gilmore fits into what I'm looking for at this point for the roster. But that is a great question, David. I really appreciate you sending in that super chat. It means a lot to us here at Utility Sports. I'm sorry that I missed it. Thank you for pointing that out to me so I could go back and cover that for you. Very, very sorry for skipping over it. Sometimes my chat here on this end updates and then it flies through the comments where I don't necessarily see all of them. So thank you so much for pointing that out, David. I am so sorry to have missed out on your super chat originally. I'm glad I was able to get to it, though. Diehard Bengals fan says, Bengals still ain't got any O-linemen. Yeah, I know you guys haven't addressed it yet. There's still plenty of time in free agency, though. Not a lot of offensive linemen have flown off the board. I thought you guys should have maybe looked at Pat Elflein on day one. He went pretty quickly, though, to the Carolina Panthers. You still have time to find a guard, and I think ultimately address a tackle through the NFL draft. It'll be awesome to see who you guys do add through the NFL draft. Ryder Play says, who do you think the most underrated free agent signing so far is? That is a phenomenal question, and I think it's Roy Robertson Harris, actually, the interior defensive lineman from the Chicago Bears. He went over to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Not only is he an underrated player in terms of what he can do in the run game, but I think it's a phenomenal fit on a team that badly needed some run defense help there in the interior defensive line department. Roy Robertson Harris, they got him on a 3-year, $25 million deal. I think that's a very, very good free agent signing at this point. Also, not a lot of people are talking about Alex Mack today to the 49ers on that 1-year deal. Yes, Trent Williams is the headliner there, but Alex Mack, great in that system with Kyle Shanahan there in San Francisco. I think that is a very underrated free agent signing as well. Harden Ghost wants to know how I feel about the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals have done really well for themselves. Of course, getting J.J. Watt, very big acquisition. I was surprised they traded a 3rd-round pick for Rodney Hudson, but at the same time, Rodney Hudson's a very good center. They are better off now today than they were without him for sure. And they still have some good assets. They'll probably trade down in round 1 either that or look to take a cornerback. I think cornerback has to be the number 1 need for them still at this point, but there is a lot that they can do right moving forward still. Thank you for the question there, Harden Ghost. Kyron says, I'm a Steelers fan and have no cap space and lost a lot of players to free agency. Bud Dupree, Mike Hilton there, you lost to the Cincinnati Bengals. Tyson Alualu went to the Jaguars, another good move for the Jags. Williams and more to come, Juju and Alejandro Villanueva. Does this change our biggest need in the draft? That's a great question. You're also going to lose James Conner, so don't forget about him either. Not trying to put some salt in the wound, but yes, you guys are losing a lot of good players. Your biggest needs in the draft has to be an offensive tackle to protect Ben Roethlisberger. You have to be looking at that edge position a little bit to get someone across from TJ Watt. I think that you guys are best off adding an edge. It was a bummer you guys couldn't get JJ Watt himself. And then running back. I think the biggest need at this point is the actual tackle spot. But for you guys, I would love you guys getting Najee Harris. I think he's a perfect addition into that roster. Diehard Bengals fan says, imagine the Bengals signed Juju, LOL. That would be a really nice fit, actually, in my opinion. However, I think that the Bengals are probably going to sit and be a little bit more patient. I would love Jamar Chase. If you guys get Jamar Chase, wow, Cincinnati's going to be a problem. Joe Burrow with Jamar Chase back in the NFL, that's scary. Teams should hope that that does not happen. Phil's fan wants to know, should the Chargers look to make an Ertz trade or keep Parham as the number one? They should definitely look at a Zach Ertz trade. I talked about that earlier. They were one of the three teams I thought that should be leading in the Zach Ertz conversation. I think he'd be a great grab for them. And I think him going to the Los Angeles Chargers is a good win-win move for both sides. Ryder Plays wants to know what I think about the Marvin Jones signing. Yes, another underrated signing. The Jaguars, I think, were a little spotty early on in free agency, but have made some very good moves since then. Marvin Jones, a great acquisition. $7 million only a year. Good move for them, and he's a great complementary piece to Laviska Shenault, DJ Chark. They've got some guys now who can run after the catch, can stretch the ball down the field, and also Marvin Jones is going to be a good red zone threat for them and someone who can play with physicality along the sideline. I think they really needed that type of addition, and Marvin Jones gives that to them at a very affordable price. Monster wants to know, do you think Clowney could play D-tackle for the Raiders to help with the run? No, I just don't really see that. I think Clowney's best suited off the edge. I think he'd probably get washed out a little bit in the run game, but don't worry. The Raiders did bring back Jonathan Hankins today. Also, Mo Hurst is going to come back for you guys next year, hopefully healthy and ready to play for you guys. That'll be a big improvement there at that position. J Mouse says, sorry, my Niners got Alex Mack. I'm pumped about us getting Alex Mack, but GG. Yeah, that is a big-time grab because Luke here said he wanted to get Alex Mack on the Steelers. He wants to know what other centers are on the board. David Andrews is a good option. I know you're looking for a Pouncey replacement long-term. Also, the NFL draft, it's littered with good centers this year. Rounds 2 through 4 are going to have a multitude of quality interior offensive linemen. Even if you don't get one in free agency, don't worry. The Steelers, very good organization. They will address the offensive line through the NFL draft. Ryder Play says he thinks that Kyle Pitts should go to the Bengals. That's an interesting thought as well. Kyle Pitts, an absolute mismatch nightmare, can play him out of the slot, can play him off the line of scrimmage at that natural tight end position, can play him way out wide. Reminds me of Jimmy Graham, actually, when he was back with the New Orleans Saints, how versatile, how dynamic he was. For those of you who might be a little bit younger, you're going to have to go back and watch some Jimmy Graham Saints highlights. And Kyle Pitts might even be more athletic than Jimmy Graham was then. I'm saying Kyle Pitts could be a top 3 or 4 tight end in the league very, very quickly. He's going to be an absolute beast. Luke Capcos wants to know if the Steelers could get Clowney. Let me look at the Steelers cap space situation right now. They're a team I'm a little less familiar with in terms of their cap space. They only have about $4 million right now. But if they do restructure a little bit, maybe try and figure out some money with some of their other players along that offensive line and defensive line. Maybe you open up enough money for Jadeveon. I think he'd be a great fit into your system, replacing Bud Dupree. However, the money is going to be the tough situation there. Burger Dust Sports says Watson hired Rusty Harden to defend him, lawyer of Roger Clemens and Adrian Peterson. Well, that's a pretty solid lawyer to hire because he's got experience working with sports personnel. He understands the significance of getting this right. He's going to put his time in. he's going to be a professional. Rusty Hardin, a pretty solid choice there for him. I hope Watson's name gets cleared. That's just a tough situation that I don't want to spend too much time talking about until we really know the facts. The Chai says, what is Kenny and Juju doing? They taking forever to sign. Yeah, Kenny Golladay and Juju Smith-Schuster are taking forever. But remember, this is their livelihood. This is their opportunity to get paid a ton of money. There's no reason for them to rush right now until they feel like they get a contract worth their value. They're risking their body. They're putting their livelihood on the line. A lot of the time, some of these guys in the NFL really do get injured severely. Look at what happened with a guy like Ryan Shazier. That's a freak accident, but you never know, knock on wood, that could happen to some other player in the NFL. These guys need to make sure that they are set long-term. Kenny, I think Golladay could sign with the New York Giants. I think he also could stay in that division and maybe sign with the Washington football team. Those are both solid places for him. Juju Smith-Schuster, I'm a little unsold on where he could land. I think Miami would be a great spot, but I think they're being patient for Deshaun Watson possibility. We'll see here. Cody Rose asking about Deshaun says, is it realistic to see Watson go to Carolina in lieu of this lawsuit accusation and Tyrod Taylor being signed? Carolina has the cap. Well, Tyrod Taylor actually did get signed by the Houston Texans. That's what you're talking about. For those of you who don't know, that is a pretty solid move for the Houston Texans, getting someone who's going to be a backup. Now, I think he's overpaid for sure. I've been really skeptical about what the Houston Texans have done all offseason long. But, I mean, it's the Houston Texans. It's what they're going to do. I just don't think right now that Deshaun Watson's going to get traded in the immediate future. I think once his name's kind of cleared out a little bit more, maybe once some NFL teams get a little bit more news on really what the situation looks like with that allegation and accusation surrounding Deshaun Watson, maybe we see them make a move. And I've been talking about Carolina earlier on in the week being a real destination for Deshaun Watson. We do have a video up on the channel covering Deshaun Watson, the 4 top landing spots for him where I think he could possibly land and why each destination makes sense. You guys need to for sure check that out after the live stream. Seahawks for Life talks about the Seahawks signing Poona Ford to a 3-year, $21 million deal. Yes, that is a pretty good deal for the Seattle Seahawks. And that's going to conclude our live stream here, guys. You guys have absolutely killed it. My voice is getting a little parched here. I'm sure you guys have been able to tell that it's been a little dry. But I've really appreciated every single second of today's live stream. You guys absolutely killed it. Jonathan Johnson wants to know real quickly before we conclude, will the New England Patriots trade for Deshaun Watson? I just don't think so, but we'll see. Evan Gagliano, welcome back to the stream. I know you've been in here all week. We are going to be in the process of concluding the stream, but you guys have absolutely killed it. Make sure to hit that like button before you leave. Let's see how many likes we can get on today's live stream. Also, don't forget to check out our Deshaun Watson video on the channel. You guys have been so great all week. Expect for a live stream tomorrow too, guys. As long as that's something you guys are interested in, we will have another one. Once it gets started up on the channel, it probably takes about 15 minutes or so for me to actually get it started. During that, I'm doing some prep stuff for the channel, some of the banners, everything that you see here going on. Really appreciate you guys. A lot of love here from Utility Sports. You guys are absolutely awesome. Burger Does Sports says, great job with the stream. W's all around. W's to you guys too. You guys have killed it all week long. This is hilarious here. I love that. Burger Does Sports. And Jay Mouse says, congrats to Trent Williams and Alex Mack. Go Niners. That will be the last comment we pin up here. Thank you, Jay Mouse, for stopping into the stream today. Thank you, Burger Does Sports, as well. A lot of you guys have absolutely been great in everything that you brought to the stream. Really appreciate you guys. In the very next video.